Chapter 1355. Commandery Prince Chonghe looked up at the increasingly muddle-headed emperor and sighed. Your Majesty, do you really want to deal with His Royal Highness? No matter what, he is still your child. If he hadn't received Prince Yi's hint before leaving the palace, he wouldn't have known that His Majesty was going to kill his own son. I'm doing this for the country and the overall situation. Sichuan Emperor didn't expect the Commandery Prince to accuse him as soon as he entered the hall. His face darkened immediately. Commandery Prince Chonghe shook his head. Your Majesty, you should know that apart from the advantages of the Empress, the King of England has the ability to govern the country, and is supported by the people and the people. He also loves his people as if they were his children. He can convince the officials and the people internally and can fend off the enemies externally. He is a rare talent for Sichuan. You shouldn't turn a blind eye to this. Sichuan Emperor clasped the table with his hands tightly. His eyes were full of frost, and his voice was colder than before. Commandery Prince, he is too fierce and too cold. He is not suitable for today's peaceful country. It's up to your Majesty to decide whether he is suitable or not. As a subject, I can only give advice from the side. Commandery Prince Chonghe's words had a hidden meaning, which made Sichuan Emperor angry again. How dare this old thing slander him? At this moment, the sound of swords clashing came from outside. Although it wasn't clear, it was enough to make these two experienced people change their expressions. Xiaoji, get in here. Eunuch Xiao's figure appeared at the sound of the voice. He scrambled inside. Your Majesty, it's bad. The King of England and the palace guards are fighting. They have already fought their way out of the hall. Sichuan Emperor's face darkened as soon as he finished speaking. He pointed angrily at the clear sound of fighting coming from the hall door, and gnashed his teeth at Commandery Prince Chonghe. Commandery Prince, do you still think such a person is suitable to be the crown prince? Commandery Prince Chonghe didn't seem to hear Sichuan Emperor's words. He raised his head and looked out of the hall with a touch of sorrow in his eyes. I'm afraid the country is going to be in chaos. Sichuan Emperor thought he agreed with him. He turned to Eunuch Xiao and said, ask Fuing to order 1,000 soldiers to stop him. Don't let him leave the palace and contact his henchmen outside. Dead or alive? Dead or alive? And Eunuch Xiao, right? Calm. Beside Xiao Su, there were already dozens of guards lying on the ground moaning. He held his sword and stood on the steps like a god. As he walked, the blood on the tip of his sword dripped onto the steps bit by bit. The rest of the people surrounded him, but they didn't dare to move forward. As he approached, they retreated step by step. More and more guards came to reinforce him. It was like a giant whirlpool with him at the center. When he moved, everyone moved with him. But at this moment, no one dared to attack him. This was their Sichuan god of war. He was someone who could shake an army of 10,000 with his anger. They never imagined that they would face such a terrifying opponent one day. He could fight against 100 people by himself. In the blink of an eye, several of their brothers had fallen under his sword. It was too terrifying. Xiao Su coldly looked at the trembling guards in front of him. They immediately retreated 2 or 3 steps, their hands trembling violently. These people were in charge of the Sichuan Emperor's safety, but they were too weak. But he knew that these people were nothing to be afraid of. His true opponent was. His gaze passed over the guards in front of him, and looked at the imperial guards in the square. They were like black ants swarming in his direction. Fu Ying, the third grandson of the right prime minister, was now in charge of mobilizing the imperial guards in the entire palace. He had the Black Feather Troop under him, and his martial arts were not to be underestimated. He didn't expect that the Fu family's power had infiltrated so deeply into the palace. But he smiled. This had nothing to do with him anymore. He just wanted to walk out of here and see his little fellow. As soon as Fu Ying arrived, the guards immediately withdrew from their positions and let the imperial guards in. King of England, this is not your city, and it is not your battlefield in the past. You are alone, without a fierce cavalry or thousands of troops. A wise man submits to circumstances. Put down your sword and surrender. I won't make things difficult for you. A bloodthirsty look flashed across Fu Ying's eyes. If Xiao Su could be captured without a fight, Then Fuing could humiliate him however he wanted. He had long found Xiao Su an eyesore. He could take this opportunity to make Xiao Su suffer, and let him know the consequences of offending the Fu family. If he wanted to fight to the death, then it couldn't be better. They had more people, and it was more than enough to kill him. Xiao Su looked at him indifferently, as if he didn't hear what he said. He raised his sword and continued to walk forward. An ant didn't deserve to talk to him. Fuing had been pampered since he was young. He had always been proud and arrogant. Even when he entered the palace and took up this important position, it was smooth sailing. He had never been treated coldly. Now that he was ignored, how could he not be angry? His eyes were filled with murderous intent. I have already said good things first. You refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Don't blame me for being impolite. Noisy. Xiao Su glanced at him coldly. If he continued to drag things out like this, he would have died a tragic death on the battlefield. Fuing felt Xiao Su's cold gaze and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Archers, get ready, shoot. The first row of Imperial Guards squatted down and drew their bows. Dozens of arrows whizzed toward Xiao Su. The sharp tips of the arrows flashed under the sun, eerie and terrifying. However, Xiao Su's expression didn't change from beginning to end. With a slight movement of his wrist, he flipped his sword and jumped up, waving his arm towards the arrows coming from all directions. He only had one sword in his hand, but looking at it, it was as if there were countless swords dancing in the air. Every arrow was blocked and the sword flashed, dazzling the eyes. Too fast, too fast. Someone couldn't help but murmur. It was the first time in their lives that they had seen such a fast sword. Fuing was also stunned by Xiao Su's superb martial arts. He had heard that when the sword was used to perfection, the naked eye wouldn't be able to see the sword. It was like seeing one's life and 10's life and 100's life and 100's of the sword. However, Xiao Su, who was about the same age as him, had such skills. As a proud son of the clan, Fuing was even more jealous. He didn't stop and ordered, "Don't stop. I want to see how long he can last." The other party was only one person while they had thousands of people. They would drag him down to death. He didn't believe that he could fly out. The arrows were endless, as if there was no end to them. Xiao Su frowned and moved even faster. He used the arrows to send them to the guards who were surrounding him. However, as soon as one group fell, another group took their place. Sure enough, there was no end to this. However, at this time, a small group of people wearing the Imperial Guard's uniform came from afar. The people surrounding them thought that they were reinforcements and immediately opened up a path. However, they didn't expect that these people would suddenly draw their swords and slash at their own people. Their actions were fast and ruthless, leaving no time for them to react. Chapter 1356. The change happened in a split second. Fuing did not expect that his own people would attack his own people. In other words, these people were not his people at all. These people helped Xiao Su get rid of the most troublesome archers, and then quickly approached Xiao Su. The attack weakened. Xiao Su looked at these people. The leader raised his head and nodded at him. "Your Highness." This was not a stranger, but Jin Xian. Xiao Su was surprised to see them here. Before he could ask, Jin Xian had already answered himself. Before Master entered the palace, he ordered Su Yi to bring the Howling Cavalry to find me. He told me to react if there was any movement. Xiao Su understood. The little fellow was afraid that he would be in danger, and left a backup plan. "I have 50 Howling Cavalry. We will do our best to escort you out of the palace." Ever since his master was placed under house arrest in the Imperial Palace, he never went to court again. Because of his identity, he often interacted with the Imperial Guards, so he took the chance to bring Xiao Qi to the Imperial Palace before the Imperial Palace was under martial law. He kidnapped the Imperial Guards and disguised himself as them to sneak into the Imperial Palace. Because the timing was right, they were not stopped outside the palace gates. Jin Xian did not tell the people in front of him how much they suffered in the palace. Because there was no need to. "Okay, let's fight side by side." Xiao Su did not talk much. He waved his hand and got rid of another person. He knew how smart and sharp the little fellow was. Only someone who cared about him could heal his past scars and bring him back to life. Today, Even if he had to wash the palace with blood, he would step out of here. Weapons clashed, blood dripped, and the blood spread. Blood dripped from his sleeves to the ground, but he did not care. His eyes were dyed red by the sun. The calmness in his eyes was gradually broken, and monstrous anger surged. Whoever stopped him from finding the little fellow, he would kill God and Buddha. 2 hours ago, Turin waited for his master to come out of the palace, and did not receive his signal. He knew that what his master was worried about finally happened. Something happened to him in the palace. "Sir, what should we do?" the subordinate beside him asked. Turin looked in the direction of the imperial palace and gritted his teeth. Act according to the plan. His master had entrusted the young princess to him, so he could not betray his master's trust. Yes. At this moment, they were already waiting outside the prison. As long as the order was given, they would immediately move out. "Who are you? This is not a place for you to stay. Hurry." Before he could finish his sentence, Turin had already killed the guard at the door. The rest of the people saw that something was wrong and immediately wanted to call for help, but they could not speak. Turin led his men over the guards' corpses and quickly entered the prison. "They're at the lowest level. We have to be fast." He had to find the little princess before the soldiers arrived. Water Spirit said that there's an iron door in front of us, and there's one on every floor below. Wood Spirit, I'll send someone to escort you to unlock the door. After Turin's words, Wood Spirit did not say anything and walked towards the first iron door under the protection of the others. He glanced at the keyhole and immediately reached into the bag he carried with him. After taking out something, he immediately fumbled around the keyhole for a moment. Soon, the first iron door opened. Wood Spirit turned around and nodded at Turin, who was doing his best to kill the enemies. Then he continued to walk forward. This prison only held serious criminals. There was an iron door on every floor. Usually, the keys were in the hands of the officials in charge of guarding the prison. They did not have much time to look for the keys, nor did they need to. The prison's lock could trap other people, but it could not trap Wood Spirit, who was known as a skilled craftsman. More and more guards came after hearing the news, but one iron door after another was opened in Wood Spirit's hands. Xiao Lai's expression did not change. If one came, he would kill one. If two came, he would kill two. In the prison, Chu Qingyan was lying on her side, quietly waiting for the arrival of night. However, she heard a faint sound coming from above. Her ears twitched and she immediately sat up. What happened? Logically speaking, the prison was the quietest place. It should not be so noisy. Because the soundproofing of the prison was very good, if one could hear a little sound, one could guess how big the commotion was above. However, not only did the sound not stop, it became louder and louder, and it seemed to be coming in her direction. She immediately became vigilant. Previously, Chu Qingyan's ears were good and heard the sound first. Now the sound was getting louder and louder. Those who guarded her also heard it, and stood up in fear. The head of the palace immediately summoned the guard. What happened? Why is it so noisy above? The guard did not understand and immediately said, "This servant will go and take a look." With that, the guard immediately walked forward. He went up a few steps and opened the iron door to investigate. However, what awaited him was a blood-stained sword. The last floor. The guard subconsciously nodded, and then quickly fell silent. Turin put away his sword and strode down the steps. Then he walked inside with a group of Xiao Lai cavalry following behind him. Because this level was not big, and Chu Qingyan was the only one being held captive, when the soldier collapsed, Chu Qingyan was stunned. She stared at the door, not in the mood to pay attention to the palace servants and soldiers who were in a mess. When Turin and the other familiar faces appeared in front of her, Chu Qingyan's eyes suddenly became dry and her nose felt sour. Finally seeing her own people, her heart was filled with joy. When Chu Qingyan saw them, they also saw the young Wang Fei that they had not seen for many days. They were excited and immediately rushed towards her. However, everyone had a clear division of labor. One group went to deal with the guards and palace guards inside. The other group guarded the door to prevent people from coming in. After Turin untied the chains, he immediately opened the door. "Young Wang Fei, I have made you suffer." Turin led everyone to kneel in front of her and blame himself. Chu Qingyan suppressed the sour and pleasant surprise in her heart, and immediately pulled Turin and Mu Ling up. This is not your fault. Quickly get up. Let's talk after we get out. Right, Ethereal is waiting outside. When we see him, he can take your pulse and see if there is anything wrong with your body, Mu Ling interjected. Chu Qingyan nodded with a smile. We cannot stay here for long. Let's go. When Turin finished speaking, everyone protected Chu Qingyan and quickly walked towards the exit of the dungeon. Master said that they had to take the young Wang Fei out of the dungeon before the other side reported. They had to race against time. Those guards that resisted were unable to withstand a single blow, and they were unimpeded the entire way. Chu Qingyan withdrew from the pleasant surprise of reunion and couldn't help but frown. Turin, don't you think that we are going too smoothly? Turin also sensed it. He pursed his lips and cautiously looked around. Young Wang Fei, are you worried that there is a trap? Chu Qingyan nodded. But when she saw the exit of the dungeon in front of her, she hoped that she was overthinking it. When everyone walked out of the dungeon and prepared to let out a sigh of relief, bows and arrows suddenly appeared in front of them. Chapter 1357. She knew that everything would not go so smoothly, but when Xiao Ran appeared in front of her, she was still a little surprised. Xiao Ran was dressed in a blue palace robe and was still as handsome as before. However, his pale lips made his jade-like face look a little pale. However, what attracted people's attention was not his sickly appearance, but the coldness in his eyes. It was a ruthlessness that she had never seen before. Qingyan, you didn't expect that I would be here, did you? Xiao Ran took the initiative to speak. He didn't look at anyone else. His gaze was fixed on her as if she was the only person in this world. Chu Qingyan felt goosebumps rise on her skin from his burning gaze. She pursed her lips and said, Aren't you sick? Why aren't you recuperating in the Imperial Palace? Xiao Ran shook his head. If I stay in the Imperial Palace and you leave, I'm afraid I'll be the last to know. Just like back then, when you were going to accompany Imperial Brother to leave the capital. I was also the last to know. This feeling is too terrible. I don't want to experience it a second time. Then what do you want? Clearly, Xiao Ran had come prepared. The entire prison was surrounded by him. All the soldiers with bows and arrows were the elite soldiers of the capital. They had fewer people and were at a disadvantage. However, she believed that with the skills of Tu Ling and the others, they still had a chance to survive. However, she did not want to gamble with their lives. She did not want to lose Big Ice Cube and Ci Shui Slope. She did not want Big Ice Cube to lose her companions who were ambushed in the northern forest. Qingyan, you know that I won't hurt you. Xiao Ran still looked at her warmly. Perhaps because of Xiao Ran's attitude toward her, Chu Qingyan wanted to take a gamble. Xiao Ran, seeing that we're friends, let us go. Xiao Ran chuckled and pointed at the people beside her. They can leave as long as you stay. Otherwise, they will all die. Chu Qingyan stared dumbfoundedly at Xiao Ran, who had taken someone's life with a smile. It was as if she was looking at the past, when he had pointed at the pastries and asked the shop owner to pack them up. It was clearly the same action, but it made her blood run cold. Qingyan, it's already my limit to let them go. Xiao Ran looked at her in shock and smiled. Come here and I'll let them go. It was as if he was coaxing a child. There was a gentle smile on his face. But she knew that when she went there, he would have a chance to order Turin and the others to be killed. Things had changed after all these years. Things had changed after all these years. I thought we could be good friends forever, but it seems like it was just my wishful thinking. When Xiao Ran looked at her sorrowful expression as she said this, he couldn't help but take a step back. He felt as if something had been broken between the two of them. When he reacted, his eyes were cold and his tone was firm. Qingyan, I will keep you safe. Come here. At this time, Turin, who had been vigilantly observing the surroundings, held his sword in front of his chest. He said solemnly and firmly to the people beside him, Little Wang Fei, we swear to protect you even if we die. When he finished, Turin gave the order, and led his people to charge in the direction where the enemy was the weakest. All the fierce cavalry did not say a word as they protected her inside. Even though they did not speak, it was better than words. They used their actions to protect her. Xiao Ran did not expect that these people would not care about their lives. But when he thought about it, how could the people who followed eldest brother be ordinary? But even if the fierce cavalry could fight 100 people, he did not believe that they could gain an advantage when there was a great disparity in manpower. The battle was fierce. The dry ground was covered in dust. In the blink of an eye, the ground was covered in blood. On Turin's side, 4 or 5 people had fallen, but the other side had lost at least 100 people. Xiao Ran saw the bravery of the fierce cavalry with his own eyes. He could not help but narrow his eyes. Before, he was worried about Qin Yan and was afraid of hurting her, so the hundreds of archers were just waiting for orders. Now that he saw that they were about to tear a hole in the encirclement, his eyes darkened. He sneered and gave the order. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Shoot. When he finished, hundreds of arrows flew towards them. The fierce cavalry had to fight the soldiers in front of them, as well as deal with the endless rain of arrows. Even though they were all elites, each of them capable of fighting against a general, they were powerless at this moment. Soon people on the outermost layer fell. But before they fell, they did not forget to use all their strength to push their little princess to a safe place. Even if they were shot into hedgehogs, they had to block in front of her until they closed their eyes. This was the person that their master valued. This was the little princess that they respected the most. Even if they had to use their last bit of strength, they had to protect her. Protect her. Chu Qingyan's eyes were bloodshot as she watched. She wished that she was the one who would take the brunt of those knives and arrows for them. She had never hated herself as much as she did now. She was useless and useless. Chu Qingyan closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was a sword in her hand. Although she had no internal energy, she could still use her moves. Just as she was about to rush out, Turin pulled her behind him and used his body to protect her. He kicked the people in front of him. Little princess, you are not their match. These people are not ordinary soldiers. They are most likely an army that His Majesty has specially trained. Turin knew that when he said this, the little princess would understand. Chu Qingyan did indeed understand. It was no wonder that these people were skilled in archery and fighting. They were even more skilled than the city guards in the capital city. Her heart sank even further. If they were in this situation, then wouldn't the big ice cube be in a worse situation? When she was in the prison, she had learned about the big ice cube situation from Turin. She was very anxious now. Seeing the fierce cavalry that eldest brother had carefully trained fall one by one, Xiao Ran felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure. He raised his hand and everyone stopped shooting. Looking at the remaining dozen people, he faintly said, Qingyan, eldest brother can't protect you. Only I can protect you. I will give you one last chance. Come here. The remaining people protected their little princess in the middle. When they heard his words, they all sneered. Chu Qingyan was also a little embarrassed at this time. Although she was more or less injured, the injuries of the people around her were more serious. They were all injured in order to protect her, this burden. She felt very guilty. Little princess, we are fine. You don't have to worry. We have already disregarded life and death. Turin knew that she was upset and comforted her in a hoarse voice. Chu Qingyan gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, Okay, if we are going to die, we will die together. Turin and the others looked as if they were unafraid of death. Just as they were about to make a last stand, suddenly, a voice slowly sounded. Bullying a weak woman in broad daylight, what kind of hero are you? If this spreads out in the future, people will laugh at you. Chapter 1358. The familiar voice, the familiar tone. It was so familiar that Chu Qingyan couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth. She looked towards the source of the voice and saw a purplish figure standing on the tallest flagpole in front of the prison, his back facing the light. He slowly fanned himself with an elegant fan in his hand. People who didn't know him would think that he was some pretentious young master. Who are you? Do you want to meddle in the imperial family's affairs? Xiao Ran looked at him vigilantly. Ever since he appeared, he noticed that Qingyan was smiling. His heart immediately felt uncomfortable, and his tone became very bad. Higashio Motetsu first looked at the little lass who was being protected. Although she was in a sorry state and was injured, she was still in good spirits. He couldn't help but feel relieved. Then, he turned to look at Xiao Ran. Previously, he had received his father's orders to do many things by Xiao Ran's side. However, he had always been in disguise, so even if he was standing in front of him now, Xiao Ran couldn't help but look at him. This young master can't be bothered to care about the matters of your imperial family. His phoenix eyes slightly turned. The brilliance was brilliant, but there was a hidden anger that couldn't be seen by others. However, this young master will not allow anyone to bully the little girl under my protection. Therefore, this young master is determined to take this person today. Xiao Ran heard this, and was about to order people to take down the person who was full of nonsense. Suddenly, he saw that person raise his hand, and a dozen small marble-like things flew down. Fourth Prince, be careful of hidden weapons. Just as everyone raised their shields to protect Xiao Ran, those marble-like things exploded when they hit the ground. Immediately, thick smoke billowed and filled the empty space in front of the prison. The change happened in the blink of an eye. Chu Qingyan and the others were about to take advantage of the situation to leave, but another person appeared beside her and grabbed her wrist. Then he said to Turin and the others, "Go towards the southeast." The wind was blowing from the southeast today. They could only leave quickly if they followed the wind. Chu Qingyan knew who was standing beside her, so she immediately repeated the words. Turin and the others would only obey her orders. Yes. Thus, everyone took advantage of the smoke to escape in the chaos. When the smoke dissipated, there was no one left on the field. Xiao Ran pushed the people in front of him away. His eyes were full of anger. Go after them. Except for Qingyan, don't let anyone go. Yes. He didn't know how to describe his luck today. As soon as he escaped from the imperial prison, he thought that he was safe. Then he ran into the capital's patrol team. They were covered in blood and were immediately targeted. Alerting a group was equivalent to alerting all of the city's defenses. Thus, the pursuit began very quickly. We can't go on like this. Little Wang Fei, this subordinate will lead people to distract them. You guys think of a way to get out of the city. As long as you get out of the city and find water spirit, you will be safe. Turin quickly finished speaking. Then he turned to Higashio Motetsu and bowed slightly. Young Master Dongting, this subordinate has offended you before. I apologize to you. Now that this is an emergency, my little Wang Fei is in your hands. Higashio Motetsu looked at the most capable subordinate of Xiao Su. He knew how tough Xiao Laiqi's bones were. He heard that when they were captured by the enemy, even if their spines were cut, they still didn't bend. Now, for their little Wang Fei, he was willing to lower his head and apologize for drawing swords at the Wang Fu. He was probably worried that he would abandon their little Wang Fei at this time. Such loyalty, righteousness, and loyalty made Higashio Motetsu feel a sense of respect. His casual attitude couldn't help but become serious at this time. Don't worry. As long as I'm here, I will protect her. Many thanks, young Master Dongting. Chu Qingyan stood at the side. Before she could speak, the two had already decided on their own. She couldn't help but want to speak. Higashio Motetsu looked over. People who don't have internal power shouldn't speak. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes and want to get angry. Turin spoke in time. Little Wang Fei, this subordinate has already told you the location of water spirit. You just have to leave the city and leave the rest to this subordinate. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan shook her head and rejected the suggestion. No, we have to leave together. Little Wang Fei, this subordinate will come back alive. If this subordinate doesn't come back alive, please bury this subordinate next to Huang Yi. This time Turin didn't obey her orders. Ignoring her objections, he knelt down to salute her. Little Wang Fei, take care. Then he led his people and jumped in the opposite direction. Chu Qingyan didn't have time to reach out and stop them. She could only watch as they flew towards the soldiers searching the streets. Her tears had soaked her clothes. I'm sorry for them. She covered her face and sobbed. Higashio Motetsu reached out to stroke her head. Don't disappoint their expectations. Let's go. Chu Qingyan looked up to the sky and shed her last tear. Her eyes were filled with determination. There will be a day, there will be a day, I will come back. I will come back to take revenge. Higashio Motetsu gave a soft sigh. He tenderly carried her on his back, and then headed towards the city gates. 4 hours ago. King of England's manor. Not long after Hualing left the manor with Father Chu and Mother Chu, he saw soldiers coming to search the manor. Hualing gritted his teeth and fiercely pounded the wall. Father Chu held 2 geese and looked in the direction of the manor. He asked in confusion, "Are those people going to the manor as guests? Should we go back and entertain them?" "No, those people don't come with good intentions. They want to search our manor." Hualing spat out each word with hatred. Father Chu threw the geese in his hands to Xining when he heard this. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to leave. Hualing couldn't care less about his grief and anger. He immediately stopped him. "Ancestor, what are you going to do? The streets were probably filled with people trying to catch them right now." Father Chu angrily waved his fists and struggled to run over. "They're destroying my home. I have to protect my home. Otherwise, son-in-law and Kai won't have a home when they come back." Once these words were said, everyone's eyes turned red. Hualing hugged Father Chu's waist and said in a hoarse voice, "Old man, we can't do that now. We have to live well. Only by living can we have the ability to come back and protect it." Father Chu slowly sighed. After Hualing let go, he slowly walked to Mother Chu's side. He leaned his head on her shoulder and said sadly, "Dan Yang, I'm useless. I can't protect my home. I can't protect you." Mother Chu hugged him with her eyes closed. Kai and son-in-law won't blame you. Don't feel bad." Hualing wiped his eyes. When he saw the carriage coming, he immediately called for everyone to get in. "Master said that we have to leave the city before the city gates close. Otherwise we won't be able to leave." Everyone knew that time was tight. They didn't have time to be sad as they quickly climbed into the carriage. There weren't many people they could bring. There was only Father Chu, Mother Chu, Xining Lve, Qingyi, and Lani in the carriage. The remaining people guarding the carriage were Hualing's Xiao cavalry. They were pretending to be a family going out to visit relatives. They had already prepared the things needed to prove their identities, so everyone headed towards the city gates. After half a stick of incense, they arrived at the city gates and lined up to be inspected. There were only 2 people left before it was their turn, but when Hualing saw the city guards comparing the portraits in their hands, he knew that things were bad. Chapter 1359. The portraits in the guards' hands were not only of Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan, but also Chu Qingyan's father and mother. The higher-ups had already made preparations to prevent them from escaping the city. Even if they were still locked up in the imperial prison, or in the king's palace, it was to prevent any possibility of them escaping. It could be seen how tightly the higher-ups were guarding against Xiao Su's group. But they were in a rush this time, and did not have time to disguise themselves. Hualing was very anxious at this time, but he did not dare show it on his face to prevent these astute officers from noticing. There was only one person left in front of them. Even if Hualing wanted to turn around and leave, it was already too late because those guards had already turned their eyes to them. It was their turn. One of the officers asked in a practiced manner, "Identity, what are you doing? Why are you leaving the city?" "We are the Liu family from the western part of the city. We are preparing to visit relatives, so we asked the officers to make it convenient." Hualing walked forward with a smile, and handed over the things in his hands. There was even some silver under them. That officer took the paper to prove his identity and returned the silver. "We are here for official business. We won't accept it." Hualing's heart skipped a beat. They didn't even want to accept the money. It seemed like the inspection was very tight. Even his back was drenched in sweat. "There is no problem with your identity, but you must have your people lift the curtain so we can see the people inside," the officer said in a formal manner. Hualing immediately bowed and cupped his hands. "My family has smallpox and it is contagious. I ask the officers for forgiveness." Hearing smallpox, the officer's foot paused and he hesitated. When Hualing saw this, he thought he could escape this calamity. Just as he was about to say something, the officer remembered the higher-ups' orders. He took the portraits and shook his head. "Even if they are sick, we still have to do official business. Lift the curtain." Hualing did not think that this person would be so stubborn. His hand could not help touching his waist. Perhaps he could only give it a try. It was at this time that a white hand lifted the curtain, and a jade tablet was thrown out. Give this to your leader. Tell him that my master is going out for some business, and ask him not to make things difficult for him." The official looked at the thing that was thrown into his arms in confusion, but when he touched the words on it, he couldn't help but jump in fright. He immediately turned his head to look for their leader. Huoling's hand that was about to pull out his weapon suddenly stopped. Although he didn't know what was going on, this wasn't the time to act rashly. He immediately gestured for his people to not move. Soon the officer came back. He bowed and placed the jade token back into the carriage. Then he let them go without saying anything. Although he was very surprised, Huoling did not say anything. He immediately led his people out of the city, afraid that these people would go back on their words. The carriage continued to run for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. After his subordinates reported that there were no pursuers, Huoling ordered the carriage to stop. He then lifted the curtain and pointed his sword at Lan Yi, who was quietly sitting in the carriage. With a cold and solemn expression he asked, "Who are you?" Lan Yi did not turn around. Chu Machen's father was puzzled. "White impermanence, what are you doing? Don't be rude to a little girl. Be careful that you won't be able to find a wife in the future." At such a serious time, Chu Machen's father's words made Huoling very helpless. However, he was also afraid of scaring the little princess consort's parents. He couldn't help but explain in a low voice, "Her actions just now were very suspicious. She might be a spy in our Fu." Chu Machen's father finally stopped talking after being comforted by Chu Machen's mother. He just kept looking at the two people. Lan Yi usually did not reveal herself. She was only in charge of the master's brush, ink, paper and inkstone, as well as taking care of the documents. She was aloof from worldly affairs. Huoling didn't expect her to reveal herself today. It made his heart jump to his throat. Sure enough, the little princess consort was right. You can't judge a book by its cover. There were already 3 examples, Hong Yi, Qing Yi and Huang Yi. Each of them was not easy to deal with. Huoling did not dare to lower his guard. He held his sword tightly and looked back at the gentle and quiet Lan Yi. "What is your purpose? Tell me the truth." "I am Prince Yi's person. I received an order yesterday that I can help His Royal Highness at a critical moment." Since her identity was already exposed, Lan Yi didn't hide it and directly confessed. Huoling was stunned. Since when was Prince Yi so kind as to help them? He used to be the one who liked to go against the master the most. Before Huoling could speak, Lan Yi continued, "I don't know what the reason is, but Prince Yi said that I can mobilize his subordinates to protect old Master Chu and old Madam Chu." Just then someone came to report, "Master, there are pursuers behind us." Huoling narrowed his eyes. Just as he was thinking about what to do, Lan Yi leaned against the tip of his sword. "If you don't believe me, you can kill me now and leave with your men. I won't drag you into this." The tip of the sword had already drawn a line of blood on her neck. Huoling frowned. Chu Machen's father, who had been watching the two, raised his hand and slapped his sword away. He said angrily, "I believe that she didn't lie to us. She even saved us just now. White impermanence, you can't hurt the little girl." As soon as Chu Machen's father finished speaking, Qing Yi and Lve both whispered in agreement. Lan Yi looked at Chu Machen's father and the others who were protecting her. A layer of moisture appeared in her eyes, but she quickly covered it up. Huoling could only put away his sword. He ignored Chu Machen's father who was glaring at him. He looked past the young princess consort's confidant, Xining, and looked at Lan Yi and the others. "If I find out that you're playing tricks, don't blame me for making a move." After speaking, he told Xining, "I'll leave the 2 masters to you." Xining nodded solemnly. Huoling took one last look at Lan Yi. He then lowered the carriage curtain and ordered everyone to move forward. In a remote residence, Xiao was still sitting under the grape trellis. His body was very weak. He could only take a short nap before continuing to flip through the letters on the table. Lin Jiangdong came from afar. When he saw Lord moving the table and chair here, he sighed heavily in his heart and stood in front of him. "Have you sent them away?" Xiao didn't even raise his head as he spoke. Lin Jiangdong nodded. "This time, we were the ones who replaced the city guard. Lan Yi handed over the token, so they let them go." Do it cleanly." Don't let the higher-ups find out that it was us who did it, Xiao said calmly. I've already instructed them. No one will find out that it was us. Xiao left the palace. No. There's no news at all. What about the imperial prison? Chu Qingyan escaped. Xiao rubbed his temples. He was very tired. Lin Jiangdong couldn't stand it anymore. His eyes were red as he said, Lord, you haven't eaten for many days. You haven't gotten your revenge yet. You can't ruin your body like this. Xiao smiled faintly. My revenge has been reported. Didn't you see? Sichuan is going to be in chaos. But, at this time, a gust of wind blew into the courtyard. The books on the table were all blown over. Lin Jiangdong didn't have time to speak. He quickly pressed down on the letters on the table, worried that they would be blown away. A book not far from Xiao's hand was blown open, revealing a letter inside. Shameless dear open. Xiao saw the words in the corner of his eyes. The letter in his hand fell to the ground with a bang. Chapter 1360. Soon, the wind stopped and the pages of the book fell back down, covering the letter. Xiao stood there in a daze, but he quickly came back to his senses. Ignoring the fact that his subordinates were still beside him, he grabbed the book and took the letter. Her handwriting was not graceful like a noble lady's, but more like an unruly wild cursive. In the past, her handwriting had been criticized by him a few times, but she had restrained herself and her handwriting was barely acceptable. He stroked the familiar handwriting, and his eyes suddenly became sour. His fingers trembled as he opened the envelope and took out the letter inside. At the beginning, it was a mischievous address that made him feel helpless and nostalgic. You're so stingy and shameless. By the time you see this letter, I might already be gone. Don't blame me for not saying goodbye to you. I've been waiting for you in the manor for a whole day and haven't eaten 2 meals. I'm about to starve to death. I'm a magnanimous person, so I won't argue with you. She didn't tell him and ran over to his place to wait. In the end, she even blamed him. He had met so many people in his life, but she was the only one who dared to accuse him like this. She even pretended that he had wronged her. I know you're busy with revenge, and I know you don't like me advising you to give up your hatred. But I still want to say that there are gods watching over you. If someone does something bad, there will always be someone to deal with them. Don't become someone you hate. A person can't lose their heart. I just want you to be well. That's right, I'm only thinking about revenge, and I'm about to lose my heart. Don't leave, stay and advise me. The housekeeper said that you always don't eat on time and don't eat enough. You suffered so much when you were young and now that you've finally become the Lord, you should eat to make up for what you've suffered in the past. People say that too much wisdom is bound to get hurt. You're too smart, so don't keep thinking about those tricks that torment people. Sometimes it's good to pretend to be confused, don't tire your head out. He didn't become the Lord for no reason. This little rascal. Why did her words of advice sound so troublesome? He really wanted to grab her and spank her a few times. But just as this thought came to his mind, he remembered that she was no longer here. In order to protect him, she broke free from his grasp and fell off the cliff. From then on, they were separated by life and death. Xiao covered his eyes with his hand. After a while, he removed his hand and continued reading. Shameless, you are a good person. No matter how many bad things you have done for revenge, to me, you are a good person. A good person will have a peaceful life. I know you're nice to me, and I'm very grateful for your protection along the way. However, we're from 2 different worlds after all. You have your great ambitions, and I only have a peaceful life. If fate allows us to meet again, let's just pretend that we don't know each other, and forget about each other. If you really know that I'm good to you, then don't let go of my hand so easily. I don't have any great ambitions. I can share the peace and happiness with you. When he woke up, he found out that on the day of the accident, she had been waiting for him in the palace for an entire afternoon. From this letter, he could guess that she had originally wanted to escape that day. But for some unknown reason, she had rushed over to save him after hearing the news. She really was a silly girl. If she had really escaped and escaped to the ends of the earth, he had hundreds and thousands of ways to catch her back. He would rather she not care about his safety and run away. It would be better than being helpless right now without the possibility of hugging her. After all these years, Xiao was good at disguising himself. His gentle and humble image was deeply rooted. Because he had been ill since he was young, it created a temperament that was not easily affected by emotions. Lin Jiangdong had followed him for all these years, so he thought that this was a master who did not experience great emotions. But after seeing Pang Zhijing fall off the cliff and the change in his master after finding her body, he found it hard to associate this master with his past master. He had personally seen his master's grief, as if he would die with Pang Zhijing in the next moment. Now, just because of a letter, this master's emotions had once again fluctuated. Lin Jiangdong could not help but admit that that woman had really left an indelible mark in his master's heart. Lin Jiangdong thought of the reaction of the servants these days, and could not help but bite the bullet. Lord, no matter how sad your heart is, you have to take care of your body. You still have a long way to go, so you must not torture your body. The rest of the letter was a long-winded nagging for him to live a good life. It was very consistent with her usual chattering personality. In the past, he had often told her to be quiet, but she would speak with conviction. Zhijing, I don't want to be quiet like a block of wood. He was often helpless because of her words, but now that he wanted to hear another sentence, it was impossible. Have someone bring the medicine over. Hearing Lord take the initiative to speak, Lin Jiangdong thought that he had persuaded him. After agreeing, he immediately turned around to instruct the servants. Little did he know that it was because of the contents of the letter. You have to live well, and live to 100 years old. Who knows, maybe in the future, I'll come and see how old you are and laugh at you for a long time. He knew that she would not be able to wait for him, but he did not want to disappoint her. Okay, I will live well. After I get my revenge, I will come to accompany you. At this time, the capital was in chaos. Chu Qingyan did not know the situation inside at this time. She and Higashio Motetsu had successfully left the city, and were quickly rushing to the agreed place. Dongting, this time you came out to save me. You hid it from the Moon Palace, right? In her delicate voice, there was a certain tone. Higashio Motetsu smiled helplessly. This little girl already knew and still asked. She must feel guilty and felt that she had implicated him. Don't worry, no one will know that I came out. Right now they are busy dealing with your highness, so they have no time to pay attention to me. He said self-deprecatingly. How do they plan to deal with my highness? Chu Qingyan could not help but feel nervous. When they first came to the capital, in order to not let Sichuan Emperor be on guard, Big Ice Cube did not bring many people with him. Now Sichuan Emperor wanted to deal with him, and Consort you also wanted to deal with him. With so many people, how could he deal with so many? Hearing that she was so concerned about Xiao, Higashio Motetsu felt envious. I don't know. Father did not let me participate. Although he didn't participate in their conspiracy this time, he more or less knew that they had set up a lot of traps and arranged a lot of experts to deal with Xiao. However, in this situation where this little girl couldn't even protect herself, it was better for him not to tell her, lest she worry and be helpless. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she could not help but purse her lips and look back at the capital, which was getting farther and farther away, hoping that Big Ice Cube would be safe. After half an incense stick of time, the two of them arrived at the agreed place, but there was no one there. Higashio Motetsu put down the person and looked around. Finally, he came back with a serious expression. I checked the surroundings. There are traces of a fight. I'm afraid that there was a scuffle here before this. However, I did not find any corpses. They have probably all been disposed of. Chapter 1361. As soon as Higashio Motetsu finished speaking, Chu Qingyan's body couldn't help but sway. Her expression was blank, and her mood fell to the bottom. In order for her to safely leave the city, Turin risked his life to lure away the pursuers, and Ethereal was separated from them. Now Water Spirit and the others' lives were unknown, all because of her. 3 of Big Ice Cube's trusted subordinates were missing. Her heart was filled with incomparable grief. She had implicated them. If it weren't for her, they would have stayed by Big Ice Cube's side and lessened the danger. What did she do to deserve them to risk their lives for her? Higashio Motetsu, who was standing at the side, saw her face full of self-blame and felt pity for her. He sighed softly. Don't be sad. Maybe they were the ones who won just now. Don't think of the worst. But her heart was still sad. All right, now is not the time to be sad. We have to leave this place as soon as possible. Maybe those people will find this place again. Higashio Motetsu vigilantly looked around. Now that the little girl had no internal strength, she was like an ordinary person, so he had to protect her more. Chu Qingyan wiped her face and stomped her feet hatefully. Hateful, I didn't expect them to be able to find this place. Little girl, this time they have made thorough preparations. Don't underestimate them. Although ants are small, they can also shake an elephant. Moreover, these people are so shrewd. He seemed to not be standing on the side of the Moon Palace, and his words revealed information to her. She knew that it was already very difficult for him to do this. She nodded at him and didn't say anything else, and immediately left with him. However, even if they quickly left that place, they were still being watched by others. The other party's people came very quickly. They were all covered in black cloth and their attacks were very ruthless. Every move was a killing move, and there were many of them. If it was a normal day, he could fight these people to a draw. But now, he had to bring a little girl with no internal strength. His hands and feet were tied, and soon there were a few more wounds on his body. Can you hold on? Chu Qingyan looked at his face that was rapidly losing color, and her face was filled with worry. Higashio Motetsu supported himself with one hand holding the sword, and the other protecting her. His expression was cold, and he no longer looked like a sloppy young master. His body was now in a very bad condition. The injuries he suffered just now were nothing, but his old injuries had relapsed because of the fight. But he didn't want the little girl to worry, and calmly shook his head. I'm fine. SSSS people. And was already exhausted. She couldn't help but ask, he was already exhausted. These people's she SSSS was he? Then Motetsu was to her too. I won't abandon you. Moreover, these people aren't mice. He coughed, swallowing the blood in his throat. Then he smiled at her. Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened. Are we going to die here? Higashio Motetsu chuckled. To be able to die with such a beautiful little girl, I, Higashio Motetsu, won't have lived in vain. What time is it now? You're still not serious. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. But it was because of his joke that she relaxed a little. Don't worry, we won't die so easily. Saying that, he quickly stuffed a pill into her mouth. This is the antidote. Then, seizing the opportunity, he waved his long sleeves and threw a few marble-sized beads at the men in black. When those beads exploded, it immediately released a pungent smell. Smoke also curled up. Higashio Motetsu took the opportunity to grab her arm and lift her up. Let's go. 2 hours later, Higashio Motetsu brought her to a secluded cave in the mountains to hide. Those people have been poisoned by my smoke and won't live for long. But it's hard to guarantee that their companions won't follow their tracks and chase after us. So, we'll hide here first and lie low for a while. After Higashio Motetsu said this, he fell to the ground. Chu Qingyan was so scared that she immediately went forward to support him. She found a flat place for him to lean against the mountain wall. At this moment, his lips were pale and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. His entire body was like an ice cube, without any warmth. Dongting, how are you? Don't scare me. Seeing her panicking and looking at him with teary eyes, he felt his heart being squeezed painfully. He wanted to raise his hand to pat her head, but his body was weak. He couldn't help but laugh at himself. I received a slap from father before, and it hasn't fully recovered. Now it's relapsed. No wonder he had lost so much weight during this period of time. She thought that he was overworked, but she didn't know that it was because of this. She immediately asked, Then do you have medicine on you? Higashio Motetsu shook his head. This is the first time father hit me. I'm not feeling good, so I'm not in the mood to treat him. My injuries are getting worse. Her eyes reddened and she scolded. Why don't you cherish yourself? If your body is damaged, isn't it your own fault? looking at the person in front of him who was glaring at him fiercely. His state of mind was incomparably calm. "Qingyan, about my background, do you want to hear it?" She was stunned for a moment, then nodded. "If you want to tell me, then tell me." His eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. Those phoenix eyes seemed to be immersed in memories. "My mother was my father's junior sister, and was also the previous palace master of the Moon Palace. My mother was in love with my father, so my grandfather made the decision for them to get married and handed the Moon Palace to my father. It was only after my mother gave birth to me that she found out that my father already had someone in his heart. The reason he married her was because he fancied the Moon Palace behind her. He needed the power of the Moon Palace to help his sweetheart. That person was my mother's junior sister from the same sect. At the same time, she was my father's childhood sweetheart. My mother left in grief and anger and never came back. And I became a child with no one to take care of me." Chu Qingyan didn't expect his background to be so full of twists and turns. Her heart was filled with shock and pity. She didn't expect that such a heartless person would have such sorrow in his heart. "You should be able to guess that my father's sweetheart was Consort Yu. My mother was disheartened and left for more than 10 years. I haven't seen her since I was 3 years old." When he met the little girl's loving gaze, his icy heart warmed. At this point, he didn't want to hide it anymore. He was afraid that he wouldn't have a chance to tell her in the future. "Little girl, there's one more thing that I want to explain to you." She blinked her moist eyes and pretended to be calm as she looked at him. "All right, go ahead." Chapter 1362. Higashio Motetsu looked at the little girl in front of him, who was pretending to be calm despite her red eyes. Although she was only 15 years old, she was beautiful and moving. At this time, her clear eyes were more moving than the mountains and lakes. He didn't take the pain to heart. He smiled slightly and looked at her with a bit more gentleness in his eyes. "Little girl, I originally didn't want to participate in this palace fight. You know that I hate being bound and forced to bow and scrape to others. Teasing others is fine, but if I spend all my time scheming against others, I find it tiring. If my father didn't know my mother's whereabouts and used this as a condition in exchange for me staying in the Moon Palace to help him, I wouldn't have gone against you for no reason. Your father actually used this to threaten you. Isn't he your father?" Chu Qingyan suddenly closed her mouth because she thought of her family's big ice cube. The Sichuan emperor was like a tiger that ate its own children, so it wasn't strange. But she didn't think that the Sichuan emperor was strange enough in this world. And that Dongting also had a father who didn't care about his own son. The Sichuan emperor was helping his other son, but Dongting Fan was helping someone else's son. The pain in Dongting's heart was probably no less than the big ice cubes. It turned out that her eyelids were too shallow. There were actually so many people in this world. She didn't deserve to be a father. "Dongting, I didn't think that your background was like this." Chu Qingyan lamented for him. But then she thought of something and hurriedly said, "Now that you're openly disobeying your father's orders, will he not tell you where your mother is?" Higashio Motetsu lowered his eyes and the corners of his mouth twitched. "Even if I comply with his request, he won't be satisfied. He uses this as a condition again and again. I'm afraid that even if I do my best, he won't tell me." Some people were like this. They were insatiably greedy and thought that they could threaten him for the rest of his life by grasping his weakness. "Why didn't you tell me before?" She had misunderstood him before and lost her temper at him. "Little girl, it's enough to make things difficult for me. I don't want to make things difficult for you because this has nothing to do with you in the first place." He already knew that this would be the result of him saying it out loud. She was a very soft-hearted girl. Seeing him so lonely and covered in scars, Chu Qingyan didn't feel good. She sighed softly. "In the end, I'm the one who dragged you down." He raised his head, his eyes flashing, and his usual playful smile. "If you really feel guilty, you can repay me with your body. This young master won't despise you for being ugly." She to beat him, but seeing how weak he was now, SSSSSS. She could only beat him. Of it of her to us to beat him. But hearings of him was so weak now. Fine. Fine, 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 fine. Old. B. Do talk nonsense, talk. Speak. Be careful. Or I'll beat you until you're looking for your teeth on the ground. He shook his head at her and said with a regretful tone, Right now, I really pity the King of England for having to deal with a tigress like you. After saying that, the sound of grinding teeth could be heard. Dong. Ting. Wang. You. Good Qingyan. Good girl. Spare me. His handsome face had already been twisted out of shape by her. Although he begged for mercy, his heart was relieved. He didn't want to evoke too much sadness from her, because of his own matters. He was still used to this kind of heartless little girl. Knowing that he was seriously injured, she didn't hit him too hard. After the fight, she saw some color return to his face. She was relieved. They were in a dangerous situation. They didn't have any medicine. There were pursuers eyeing them covetously. She didn't have any internal strength. She also didn't have anything on her. His old injuries had relapsed. It could be said that they were in a hopeless situation. She had lived 2 lives, but she had never been so anxious. Dong Ting, let me take a look at your injuries first. As she spoke, she recalled that when she was in Lian City, she had followed Yen Luo for a period of time. She more or less knew some medicinal herbs. She thought that she could go out and look for some medicinal herbs to heal his injuries later. When she was about to reach out her hand, she met a pair of good-looking eyes that seemed to be smiling. I say, if your husband knew that you were alone in a room with a man and a woman, who knows how jealous he would be? Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. Look at the situation now. Can't you be a little more serious? Girl, you don't understand romance at all. He shrugged, but it affected his injuries. He grimaced in pain. Chu Qingyan laughed at him. Serves him right. But when she put her hand on his shoulder and was about to check his injuries, a cold hand held her hand and stopped her. She frowned and looked at him in confusion. She heard him say, Don't worry. While I'm still alive, I have something to give you. Can you stop cursing yourself? Hearing his discouraging words, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but feel angry. But soon, she realized that something was wrong. Why can't I move? What did you do? Her whole body stiffened and she couldn't move at all. Higashio Motetsu withdrew his hand from her acupuncture point and coughed violently. Then, under her worried and bewildered gaze, he slowly curved his lips. Close your eyes and don't speak. She knew that he wouldn't hurt her, but she didn't know what he wanted to do. She was afraid that he would do something stupid. Dongting, don't mess around. If you dare to leave me. Before she could finish speaking, she stopped breathing. Only then did she know that he had even hit her mute acupuncture point. She panicked and kept looking at him, hinting that he should open her acupuncture point. However, he didn't look at her eyes. Instead, he walked to her back. She was anxious and worried. She had a bad feeling in her heart. Although his speech and behavior today were the same as usual, she felt that something was wrong. The way he looked at her had a bit of hesitation and reluctance. Her heart couldn't help but hurt. This bastard, what was he thinking? At this time, Higashio Motetsu, who was sitting behind her, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He was glad that he moved quickly and didn't let her notice. In front of him, a head of black hair spread over her round shoulders. She was beautiful beyond compare. He didn't know if it was because she had suffered in the past 2 days, but she was much thinner than before. It made people feel pity for her. Looking at her for a while, he knew that she must be cursing him in her heart. He curled his lips and swallowed the blood in his mouth. Then he reached out his hands and pressed his palms against her back. Then he slowly closed his eyes. Because she couldn't move her body or speak, Chu Qingyan could only rely on her hearing. But this person just sat behind her without saying a word, making her anxious. But very quickly, she felt his hand on her back. A warm current flowed from his hand into her body. Was he trying to release her suppressed internal energy? Her heart was filled with joy, but she quickly frowned. This method was feasible, but his current body couldn't withstand the surge of internal energy. Wait a minute. Her eyes suddenly widened. They were filled with disbelief and shock. Chapter 1363. Chu Qingyan realized that other than her inner energy that had been released to circulate around her body, There was also a warm current that did not belong to her. Furthermore, this warm current was increasing in number, and the two warm currents were chasing each other in her meridians. Very quickly, they merged into one. The tiredness in her body was swept away and her spirit was instantly clear. But her face was filled with incomparable shock and even panic. Dong ting, he was actually transferring his internal energy to her. Didn't he know that this was a great loss to his body? Now that he was seriously injured, she was afraid. She was afraid that his life would be in danger. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears flowed down her cheeks and her heart was filled with endless grief. But she could not stop the endless heat flow from entering her body. At this time, Higashio Motetsu was also not feeling well. Sweat dripped down from his forehead, and his face was also covered in fine beads of sweat. His internal injuries were very serious. Now that he was using all his internal energy, his internal organs felt like they were being roasted. His expression was filled with pain, but he gritted his teeth and endured. The color of blood receded from his body. His originally snow-white skin was now even paler. If it was under the sun, it would have become transparent. His internal energy was constantly being drawn out of his body, as if his meridians were being cleansed. This kind of pain was not something that everyone could endure. However, as his internal energy flowed out, his expression became calmer because he was already numb to the pain. He looked at the person in front of him, and his eyes gradually filled with gentleness. Little girl, this is all that I can do for you. Just treat it as making up for my previous frivolity. He slowly closed his eyes and his hands slightly exerted force, increasing the speed of his internal energy. Originally, he thought that even if he was standing opposite of Xiao Su, he would still have the ability to protect her from harm. But he had overestimated his own ability and underestimated the ambitions of those people in the capital. They would not even let her off. If he had not been immersed in the sadness of being injured by his father, the people below would not have neglected to pay attention to her. It was only when something happened to her that he found out, but it was already too late. Because of the sudden addition of nearly 20 years' worth of power in her body, absorbing and transforming it into her own internal energy not only required time, but also a strong spiritual power. Therefore, when the two internal energies merged, Chu Qingyan fainted due to lack of physical strength. Higashio Motetsu retracted his hand and supported the person who was falling towards him. Then he let her lean into his embrace and placed one hand on her wrist. He could feel that her internal force had been released and her skills had improved. He could not help but smile. However, at this time he coughed violently. Just as he caught his breath, he spat out a mouthful of black blood. His body swayed. Fortunately, he leaned against the wall and did not fall down in a sorry state. He casually used his sleeve to wipe off the bloodstains at the corner of his mouth, not caring at all. If Chu Qingyan was still awake, she would definitely be surprised that a person who usually paid so much attention to her appearance would have such a day. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes to rest for a while before opening them to look at the person in his arms. Her facial features were exquisite and beautiful. Even if she was barefaced, she was still more noble than those noble ladies who were meticulously dressed up. It was just that normally, her brows were always filled with smiles, but now her brows were slightly wrinkled and filled with worry. He raised his hand to smooth out her wrinkled brows and his eyes were filled with gentleness. Little girl, I'm afraid that I can't accompany you anymore. How I wish that I had enough time to see you bloom, to see you happy, to see you filled with children and grandchildren. But I don't have much time left. He gave a gentle smile. To think that I, Higashio Motetsu, have traveled far and wide, passing through thousands of flowers. I can see through other people's hearts, but I can't see through my own feelings. Little girl, it's only today that I know that I don't have any brotherly feelings for you. He gently stroked the black hair of the person in his arms. His phoenix eyes were filled with affection, so gentle that it seemed like they would turn into a pool of water. If it weren't for the fact that you already have someone in your heart, I would definitely use any means to keep you by my side. But your heart can't let go of someone. Although I, Higashio Motetsu, am quite shameless, I know my own limits. I won't become an ungrateful scum like Xiao Ran. But when did I start to like you? Why didn't I notice it at all? He frowned and his memories began to scatter. Was it the fleeting glimpse when they first met? Or was it the breathtaking moment when they met again? Or was it the longing and reluctance to part when they were about to part in Jiangnan? No, it shouldn't be these. He recalled the rainy night 5 years ago. She was so weak that she had dashed into the encirclement to save Xiao, regardless of her own safety. He recalled that in order to find the antidote for Xiao, even if it was a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, she would still rush in. He recalled many scenes of her and Xiao, and it was precisely because of this that he began to pay more attention to her. Only now did he realize that he was envious of Xiao, who was able to obtain this kind of love from the little girl. It turned out that he yearned for this kind of sincere affection so much. His heart, which had been lonely for too long, also hoped to be warmed. In fact, he and Xiao were the same kind of people. It was just that Xiao was cold on the outside, while he was cold on the inside. She was like a ray of sunshine, unknowingly illuminating the loneliness in other people's hearts. This kind of warmth and light was the salvation he yearned for. He lowered his head, as if he wanted to engrave her face into his memory and hide it deep in his heart. Little girl, you have to live well and happily. If Xiao bullies you, you must not let him do as he pleases. You must beat him up as fiercely as you beat me. But I know you can't bear to do it. Her clear eyes gradually turned red, and then she closed them. When she opened them again, the pain had already been hidden along with the tears. Little girl, in the future when I'm not here, you have to protect yourself. He gently hugged her and tenderly stroked her long hair. In the end, he seemed to have made up his mind to put her down. After settling her down, he slowly stood up using the wall as support. After his gaze left her body, he left her side and slowly walked towards the entrance of the cave. Little girl, since I can't be the person you care about the most, then let me leave behind an unforgettable memory in your heart. The person who slowly walked away did not turn back to look at her. Every step he took was so firm, so lonely, and so resolute. If he died in front of her in the end, she would be in pain and sorrow. But time was like an omnipotent medicine, it could heal any kind of wound. He was afraid that as time passed, she would forget this pain and forget him. He was afraid that time would bury the last memory he had in her heart. So he wanted to use his final departure without saying goodbye to leave her with a regret. Only this kind of regret could last for a long time. That was the only way she would remember him. No one would have thought that the playboy, who seemed to be frivolous on the surface, would be so affectionate. Even in the last moments of his life, he wanted to spend it alone. It was just to leave the impression he had in her heart that he was always so carefree, and not the current sorry state he was in right now. She had thought that they were just strangers, but it had become an indelible cinnabar in her heart. A sigh, a lifetime of love. Her purple robe brushed by the mountain wind, leaving behind a shallow and deep love. Chapter 1364. When Xiao's group left the imperial palace, their clothes were dyed red with blood. It was impossible to tell the original color of the clothes, and it was impossible to tell if the blood came from their opponents or their own. Although they were covered in blood, their spirits were very high because they had finally left the imperial palace. But it was not too early to be happy. They had just passed a tall mountain, and there was still a sea of fire in front of them. Your Highness, there are 2 more checkpoints at the city gate. The soldiers have surrounded the city gate so tightly that not even a drop of water can trickle through. Now, Jingdo can only be entered and not exited. It will not be easy for us to get out of the city. Jin Xian sent people out to investigate and quickly received the news. At this time, his brows were tightly furrowed and his cold face showed anxiety. After leaving the imperial palace, the coldness on Xiao's face was still like December snow that could not be melted. When he heard Jin Xian's report, his expression did not change much. He raised his hand and made a gesture, saying lightly, "Rest first, then we'll make plans." Yes. Jin Xian retreated to give the order. Su Yi and the others only began to rest and bandage their wounds after receiving the news. This time, they had used up a lot of energy to fight their way out of the imperial palace. If they had not made some arrangements before entering the imperial palace, they would not have been able to escape so successfully today. Now, they were in the mountain behind the King of England's manor. The most dangerous place was also the safest place. Earlier, people had already come to search the manor. Now it was an empty house. Although the people above had sent soldiers to guard it, the security was not as tight as other places. So, they had climbed over the wall very smoothly. Moreover, the manor had medicine for wounds, and all kinds of things they needed at the moment. It could not be more convenient. But no one dared to go too far. They all found a place to rest in the courtyard. They were worried that there would be changes, so they could react at the last minute. Xiao stood by the window of the study. He could see the courtyard full of wounded people. These people were originally the fierce cavalry that he had trained. Later, because they went to Jiangnan, their willpower and martial arts were wasted, and they were taken away by the little fellow. At that time, he had thought of directly crippling them, because there had never been a coward under his command. However, it was also the little fellow who took over, slowly guiding them out of their decadence and regaining their fighting spirit. He saw that although these people's skills were not as good as the fierce cavalry, but they were enough to protect the little fellow's safety, so he let them stay by her side and did not pay attention to them anymore. However, after today's battle, he was a little surprised. These people's skills were not inferior to the valiant cavalry. The drive and ruthlessness of the past had also returned. Thinking about it, all of this was due to the little guy, who had never given up on training and teaching them. He smiled. She had always had the ability to use her passion to infect the people around her, and bring them into the fiery sunshine. She was very smart and always had a backup plan. Otherwise, Jean Xian would not have brought people into the palace, and he would not have been able to escape so easily. However, she had always been thinking for others. She left all the fierce cavalry to him, but now he did not know where they were. Did Turin successfully rescue her? These questions made Xiao unable to help but restrain his smile. His gaze passed through the courtyard, through the high walls, and looked into the distance. His gaze was distant and full of worry. At this time, a series of footsteps hurriedly entered the room. "Your Highness, look who is back." The always calm Jean Xian could not help but raise his voice. He was somewhat happy. Xiao turned around and saw a person covered in blood 5 or 6 steps away from him. The person suddenly knelt down and kowtowed. "Master, this subordinate has returned." His voice was excited and hoarse. There was not a single part of his body that was intact. It could be seen how difficult it was to come back. "Why are you here? Where is Ian?" Xiao saw that it was Turin who had returned. After seeing that his injuries were not serious, he immediately asked with a frown. Turin raised his head and recounted in detail his encounter with Xiao Ran and Higashio Motetsu in the prison, and their departure in 2 different directions. He said, because the pursuers were so close, this subordinate could only ask young Master Dongting to take the young princess away, while I led people to distract the pursuers. If this subordinate did not have a good understanding of the capital's terrain, this subordinate would not have been able to escape this time. Later, I saw the signal that Master had sent and returned to the prince's residence. In the end, he said with a look of guilt, this subordinate was incompetent and was unable to successfully take the young princess away from the capital. We also lost nearly half of our brothers. Please punish me, Master. Xiao couldn't bear to scold his loyal subordinate after learning about the hardships he had gone through. He helped his loyal subordinate up and said, "We didn't have enough people to begin with, and we fell into their trap. It's already perfect that we were able to escape unscathed. You don't have to blame yourself." Turin's eyes were slightly red, and he nodded heavily. "Your Highness, this subordinate sent people to inquire about the news that Xiao Ran is still sending troops to search for my master. My master should be safe now." Jean Xian immediately reported after the 2 finished talking. After hearing this, Xiao eyes were cold and oppressive. This time, the methods that Imperial Father used to deal with him did not surprise him. The only thing that could be counted as a surprise was his gentle 4th brother. He originally thought that he was a kind child, but he did not expect that he would have designs on the little fellow. Moreover, because of him, so many things happened afterwards. Now he was leading troops to stand against him. It would be a lie to say that he was not disappointed. In the imperial family, Only the 4 princes survived. Although his second brother was close to him, he did not stay at home since he was young and played everywhere. His third brother also closed his door and did not come out. Moreover, he resented him a lot. Because he was not in the capital all year round, he had little contact with his 2 brothers. When he returned to the capital, his 2 brothers had already grown up. Only his 4th brother was young and liked to stick to him. As the eldest brother, he felt pity for this clever and well-behaved younger brother, and cared for him more. However, he did not expect that one day, they would turn against each other and become enemies. Now, because of this younger brother that he doted on, he was separated from the little fellow again. This kind of feeling was like raising an ingrate. At this time, he missed the little fellow very much. He wanted to see her smile. He wanted to hold her and warm his lonely heart. Seeing that his master did not say a word, Turin looked at Jean Xian with some worry. Jean Xian shook his head at him. His master's life and death were unknown. His Highness' heart must be heavy. Turin sighed. Now, it was better for them to quickly discuss the whereabouts of the little princess, and the plan to leave the city. At this time, the sound of swords being drawn came from the courtyard. "Who is it? Come out!" Xiao shouted coldly. "How much of a conflict do I have with your imperial family? In the past, every time I came here, I was either chased by geese or scratched by cats. Today, it's even better. So many swords. If I don't blink, I will become a hedgehog." A self-mocking and teasing voice came from the courtyard. It was leisurely and at ease. Chapter 1365. Turin's eyes lit up when he heard the voice. Wasn't that the second prince? Jean Xian didn't know the identity of the second prince because he wasn't in the mansion for a long time. He instinctively wanted to go out and arrest the second prince, but Turin stopped him. "Don't worry, he's one of us." Xiao looked at the man and raised his eyebrows. "There's no cat or goose this time. Why are you still in such a sorry state?" Xiao looked at him and said, "There's no cat or goose this time. Why are you still in such a mess?" The man was brushing the grass off his clothes. He rolled his eyes at the man who spoke. "Do you think I want to do that? If it weren't for the fact that you're so tightly surrounded, I wouldn't have thought of digging a hole to get in." Xiao sighed. "I can't believe that I, the son of the royal family, would crawl into a dog hole one day. I don't think anyone would believe it if they heard about it." It was rare for his master to relax. Turin smiled and said, "If it was someone else, the people wouldn't believe it. But if it was you, I think they would believe it." There was nothing that the second prince couldn't do. He slept on the streets at night, put on makeup, and sometimes ran to people to set up a stall. He didn't put on the airs of a prince, nor did he act like one. That was why the Sichuan emperor didn't guard against him. Instead, he was concerned about whether he had disgraced the royal family again. So he took care of him everywhere. Xiao snorted at Turin, then turned to the man in front of him and winked slyly. "Eldest brother, I sacrificed myself for you. Don't forget about my benefits in the future. You don't have to be especially good to me. Just make up for it with the wine made by my sister-in-law. It doesn't matter if it's 10 or 20 jars, the more the better." After he finished speaking, he realized that his eldest brother had been looking at him coldly. He couldn't help but shrink his neck. Did he ask for too much? But his sister-in-law wouldn't be so stingy. "Are you done?" "Yes, I'm done." "Then get out of here. What is this place? It's not a place where you can play as you wish." Xiao scolded coldly. Only now did Xiao realize that his imperial brother was angry. He was so strict because he didn't want him to be involved in this dispute. He sighed heavily in his heart. Even at this time, his imperial brother was still concerned about him. He didn't know if his imperial father was blind. He actually told him that his imperial brother wanted to rebel and harm his brothers. "Brother, don't get angry. I've brought good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear at first?" After he finished speaking, he received a cold glance from his eldest brother. Xiao didn't dare to keep him in suspense and hurriedly said, "The good news is that on my way here, I heard the officials talking about sister-in-law being taken out of the city." After saying the first half, Xiao secretly glanced at his eldest brother. He felt that his brother's expression had calmed down. He gritted his teeth and continued. The bad news is that Xiao Ran, that stinking brat, has already led people out of the city to chase after her. Xiao Su was relieved when he heard the first half of the news. But when he knew that there were people chasing after her, his expression became cold again. He directly said to his subordinates, "Rest until midnight. Then we'll force our way out of the city." He couldn't care too much. Besides Higashio Motetsu, there were no other secret guards by the little fellow's side. Even if Water Spirit was outside to help, he couldn't be at ease. He had to get out of the city today. Xiao Yao was anxious when he heard. "How can you force your way out of the city like this? Don't you know that there are traps set up at several city gates? They're just waiting for you to walk into the trap. Why are you still running into the muzzle of the gun? Is there a better way now? If they stayed here, it would be more dangerous for them if they delayed for another day." It was hard to guarantee that those people wouldn't be able to find them in the city. When he thought of this, it would really be hard to escape. Xiao Yao suddenly changed his tone and laughed. "Yes, of course there is. How can I take such a big risk just to send you these 2 pieces of news?" Turin and Jean Xian, who were waiting on the side, looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Xiao Su's gaze fell on his unruly brother in front of him. Xiao Yao immediately raised his nose and looked at him. "What? Are you looking down on your younger brother? In any case, I'm a prince who struggled to survive in the palace, okay?" Xiao Su withdrew his gaze. "What way?" His younger brother was best at pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Even their imperial father was deceived by him. Maybe he could really help. "Don't worry, follow me." After Xiao Yao finished speaking, everyone looked at their master. After receiving his approval, they took their weapons and followed Xiao Yao out of the courtyard. The night was getting darker. The group of people used the cover of the darkness to walk on the roofs like ghosts. They walked silently, and were even lighter than cats. In the end, the group stopped in the backyard of a brothel. At this time, there was already someone waiting there. The gorgeously dressed girl bowed to Xiao Yao with a cautious expression. "Master, everything is ready." "Good." After Xiao Yao agreed, he turned to the person behind him and said, "Imperial brother, hurry up." Xiao Su glanced at the unremarkable brothel, then withdrew his gaze and followed his younger brother inside. On the way, they could hear the sounds of women singing and swallows talking in the front yard. It was very lively. Turin grinned. It was rumored that the second prince was indulging in pleasure and forgot about home. This was probably all a cover. No wonder Master said that the second prince hid his strength. It was indeed so. At this time, the group of people walked into an ordinary room. The girl went forward and fumbled for a moment behind a vase. Then, she heard a light sound and a hole half the size of a person appeared on the ground. "Eldest brother, please." The girl went down first. Xiao Yao raised his hand to Xiao Su. Xiao Su nodded and led the others down. After a dozen steps, they arrived at a flat ground. Torches were lit, illuminating the darkness of the corridor. "I didn't expect the second prince to have such a trick up his sleeve. As expected, he is far-sighted." Turin praised. The girl walking in front pursed her lips and smiled. This was just a hole that her master dug to make it convenient to go out of the city without being discovered by the people above. She didn't expect that it would be used in such an important situation today. "It's better to be safe than sorry. If one day the people above want my head, I can run away." Xiao Yao enjoyed the praise very much. His feet were about to float. At this time, the eldest brother glanced at him. He immediately put away his complacency and touched his nose. The eldest brother had always been smart. He must have guessed why he dug this hole. "Our brothel is near the south gate. This hole also leads to a forest outside the south gate." The girl in front explained. Hearing this, Turin immediately said, "Water Spirit and the others are also waiting at the south gate. Maybe we can see the little princess." Xiao Su nodded and quickened his steps. Xiao Yao rolled his eyes. As soon as he heard that his wife was outside, he walked faster than the wind. As expected, he only cared about his wife and forgot about his brother. He even tried his best to help him. But just as he was complaining in his heart, he walked faster. He shook his head helplessly and immediately chased after him. Chapter 1366. Although this tunnel wasn't far from the south gate, Xiao had arranged for the exit to be very far away so that no one would be able to see through the concealment of the tunnel. By the time they came out, it was already close to dawn. Xiao was so tired that he could barely walk. He leaned against a tree and panted as he rested. He looked at the tall and slender figure standing there not far away, seizing the time to give orders to his subordinates. Although he was covered in dust, the iceberg in his eyes was still there. He knew what he had experienced today. The reason why he was able to remain standing was because of his powerful mental strength. This was the reason why he had always admired this imperial brother of his. No matter what, he was always able to remain calm in the face of danger. No matter how big the blow was, he was unstoppable. However, the imperial brother of the past was no longer the same as the current imperial brother. In the past, he had lived too bitterly. Now that he had a chance to break free from those shackles, it couldn't be better. Not long after, Xiao finished giving orders and walked back to bid farewell to Xiao. After today, the imperial court will be in turmoil. If you have nothing to do, don't wander around. It's more important to protect yourself. Originally, Xiao was worried about him. However, after today's trip to the tunnel, he realized that this imperial brother of his wasn't as useless as he had thought. At the very least, he had the ability to protect himself. Thus, he didn't say too much. Xiao raised his eyes and saw him looking at him with a gentle expression. His lips were moving, but he didn't know what to say at this moment of parting. His chest was full of words. In the end, he only managed to squeeze out a sentence. Imperial brother, you have to take care of yourself. No matter what happens, this imperial brother will stand by your side. That was enough for him. Xiao smiled and patted him heavily on the shoulder. Then he turned around and strode away. Turin, Jean Xian, and the others bowed to him and bid farewell. Then they followed after their master. Looking at the black figure gradually blending into the sky, Xiao called out, "Liani." "This subordinate is here," the brothel girl replied in a low voice. "If it weren't for Imperial Mother, I'm afraid I would really be alone." Liani was slightly taken aback. She then looked in the direction that the group of people had left in. She knew that Her Highness valued her brother, the King of England, a lot. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dug this tunnel. Although it was said on the surface that it was for the convenience of sneaking out of the city, only her trusted subordinates knew the true reason. This tunnel had been successfully dug 5 years ago, and today was the first time it was being used. 5 years ago, the Sichuan Emperor had the intention of dethroning the King of England. His Royal Highness had dug and built it just in case. Liani retracted her gaze and comforted. "Hasn't your Highness waited for this day for many years? His Royal Highness being able to escape the abyss of suffering is something to be happy about." Xiao thought about it and agreed. The worry on his face was swept away, and he looked at Liani with a wisp of admiration. "Liani, you're the one who sees things clearly. Let's drink and sing. Who cares if the sky is about to collapse? Let's get drunk today and worry tomorrow." As he spoke, he walked back the way he came with his hands clasped behind his back. His footsteps were light as if he had put down the heavy burden on his body. Liani smiled and followed him. "What song does your Highness want to listen to today? Take care on a long journey." "All right, Imperial brother, take care. If fate allows, we'll meet again." Compared to Xiao's relaxed and unrestrained return, Xiao's eyes were heavy at this moment. "Master, we didn't see any traces of Water Spirit and the others. We also didn't see the little Princess Consort." Turin quickly walked to his side and reported. They were now at the place where Water Spirit was supposed to meet up with her. However, after searching the surroundings, they didn't see anyone. According to the traces left behind, there was a fight here, and then the people disappeared. Xiao knew this was the result, but what he was most concerned about now was whether the little fellow was safe or not. Just as he suppressed the restlessness in his heart and prepared to plan the next step of the plan, he caught sight of a red mark not far away from him from the corner of his eyes. His gaze paused and he immediately walked over. Turin and the others were still waiting for their master's orders. When they suddenly saw his expression change slightly and walk in another direction, they immediately understood that their master had discovered something. At this moment, Xiao Su walked under a tree. There was a bough tied on the brown tree trunk. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, it might be a girl who tied it for fun. However, only Xiao Su knew that this bough had a special meaning, because only his little fellow knew how to tie it. Isn't this the cloth that the little princess consort is wearing today? When Turing came over, he noticed it at a glance and asked in surprise. Yes. Xiao Su raised his hand and took off the red ribbon. There were still threads on the edges. It could be seen that it was torn from the clothes in a hurry. He narrowed his eyes and said, "When she came, Water Spirit had already met with an accident. She and Higashio Motetsu were afraid that the pursuers would catch up with them, so they left directly. She tied 2 knots, which represented 2 people. The loose knot represented that her life was not in danger at the moment. This was the little fellow's message to him." It was just a game she thought of when she was bored in Lianqing. She didn't expect that it would come in handy today. Jean Xian and the others were happy when they heard this. It was good that the little princess consort was fine. "Master, His Majesty has sent General Li to capture you. What should we do next?" Turin asked. Xiao Su wrapped the ribbon around his finger and said, "Let's leave here first and meet up with the army." Yes. Now that they were surrounded by enemies, they had to find reinforcements. Otherwise, they could only passively take a beating. Xiao Su lowered his head and stroked the ribbon. The soft touch made him feel a little relieved. "Little fellow, you must be well before I find you." In an inconspicuous courtyard, Pang Huang listened to the reports from his subordinates, his expression unsettled. "I didn't expect them to rebel. Ha ha ha, the heavens are helping me." When he heard that Xiao Su had broken out of the palace, Pang Huang laughed heartily. This was the first time he had been so carefree since the 2 armies had been defeated. Seeing his crown prince so happy, Tuoli couldn't help but grin and say, "We haven't done anything yet, but they've already killed each other. The situation is very favorable for us. Your Highness, should we start moving?" After Pang Huang laughed heartily, he raised his hand and said, "Don't be in a hurry. We can wait for them to become more chaotic before we make our move. Now that Sichuan is in chaos, I don't think that Sichuan has the energy to negotiate peace. You can directly write a memorial saying that the princess died in an accident. We have to go back and choose a new princess for peace. We have to leave the capital first. That would be great for him." "Your Highness is right. Our troops suffered heavy losses last time, so we need some time to recuperate. This time, Xiao Su and Sichuan Emperor are at odds. Let's first watch them fight to the death, then we can reap the benefits." Tuoli smiled and calculated. Pang Huang waved his hand and approved. "Your Highness, do you want to leave first?" This time, the Crown Prince came with them secretly. As a subject, he had to ensure the Crown Prince's safety, especially at this very dangerous moment. "No hurry. This Crown Prince still has things to do. You can leave some people behind to gather information. The rest of you can return to prepare for war." Pang Huang rubbed his chin. He seemed to have heard some incredible news, and wanted to personally meet the girl in red. The girl he had never forgotten, Chu Qingyan. Chapter 1367. Tick-tock, tick-tock. There seemed to be a sound ringing in her ears. Chu Qingyan opened her heavy eyelids, and saw a white light in front of her. When she struggled to get up from the ground, she saw that the white light was emitted by a large luminous pearl, making the entire cave seem like it was daytime. She knew that this was Dong Ting's doing. This person was very particular about showing off. No matter the season, he would always bring a fan with him. He also carried many strange things on him, such as luminous pearls for illumination, medicine pouches to prevent mosquito bites, etc. That's right, Dong Ting. She remembered the scene before she fainted. Ignoring her heavy body, she crawled up and looked around. However, the cave was only so big. Other than her, there was no one else. He wasn't here? Then where did he go? When she jumped up, she could clearly feel that her limbs were more flexible than before. She knew that this was because her internal strength had been restored, but she also felt that her internal strength had more than doubled. Thinking of how he had passed his skills to her without any explanation, her face couldn't help but turn pale. Why did he do that? No, she had to find him and ask him clearly. However, just as she was about to leave the cave, she saw a bloody handprint on the mountain wall. When she squatted down to investigate, she found that there was also a pool of blood on the ground. Although it had already dried up, it wasn't hard to determine how much blood he had spat out at the time based on the amount of blood he had spat out. But when she thought of the assassins she had met along the way, they weren't enough to injure him to this degree, unless his original internal injuries had already reached an extremely serious stage. Dong Ting, what happened to you? She remembered the last time he had looked at her. It seemed to be filled with endless vicissitudes and relief. That gaze didn't seem like a weak man's, but rather like an old man with one foot in the grave. Her heart began to ache. It was also at this time that she saw a line of words carved on the ground. Casual and arrogant. It was very similar to his personality. Little girl, don't look for me. See you in the next life. She suddenly fell to the ground. Next life? No wonder he risked breaking his meridians to break the shackles of her internal strength, and then passed all his skills to her. But why did he leave her in the end? He was seriously injured and couldn't have gone far. She thought this and stumbled out of the cave. She didn't care if there were any pursuers outside. At some point in time, the sky was covered with dark clouds. It was clearly dawn, but it was still dark. A huge thunderbolt exploded at the top of the mountain, and suddenly, heavy rain poured down. Chu Qingyan didn't care that she was drenched. She clung onto the tall grass and bushes and shouted loudly, Dong Ting, come out. I know you haven't gone far. I know you can hear me. The rain ran down her cheeks and blurred her eyes. She fell again and again, but no matter how many times she fell, she still got up and called his name again and again. The rain continued for a long time. She walked for a long time and shouted for a long time. However, in the vast wilderness, the only response she got was the howling wind and torrential rain. Her lonely figure was like duckweed on the surface of a river, teetering on the verge of collapse. In the end, she missed her footing and fell to the ground in the rain. Sorrow and helplessness suffused her entire body, and she was like a child that had been abandoned by the heavens and the earth. She was so lonely and sorrowful. Daunting. Do you know that you don't have much time left? But how can you abandon me like this? Do you think that by giving me all your skills, you can guarantee my safety? She fiercely wiped her face and took out the bone whistle from her bosom. Trembling, she brought it to her pale lips, and then used the last of her strength to blow it. The whistle sounded, but it wasn't sharp at all. It was more like the sound of a gentle breeze blowing through the leaves. It was drowned out by the heavy rain. A purple figure slowly walked in the mountains. The rain soaked his clothes and also his face. After being soaked by the rain, his devilishly charming face became even more beautiful and charming. Even though he was covered in rain and looked desolate, he still looked like a touch of beauty in the mountains. It was as if the most beautiful scenery in the world couldn't compare to the faint smile on his lips. At this moment, he seemed to hear something that made his eyebrows tremble. Then he stopped and listened, as if he was listening to heavenly music. The bone whistle was a keepsake he gave her. Whenever she needed him, she could blow it to find him. This was his promise to her. However, this time he couldn't fulfill his promise. Little girl, in the future, when you see the bone whistle, it's like seeing me. I can't accompany you, so let it accompany you. When the last whistle returned to the mountains, the person who stopped once again lifted his feet and walked into the boundless wind and rain. In the past, I didn't know what love was, but when I saw your eyes, it was as if I saw 10,000 rivers and 1,000 mountains. Even though I know you have someone else in your heart, I still like you very much. Just like the wind that flies for 10,000 li without asking when it will return, just like a moth that flies to the flame, regardless of day or night, just like the pattering of the heavy rain, falling to the ground without a sound. Could it be that you're not even willing to let me send you off for the last time? Chu Qingyan held the bone whistle. When she knew that he wouldn't appear again, she finally buried her face in her knees like a wounded little animal. She couldn't bear it anymore and started to cry. The first time they met, he forced her to help him hide his tracks. The second time they met, he still forced her to help him hide his tracks. For the first few times, she was the one who was forced. Sometimes, she really wanted to ask the heavens why she always met this annoying person. Although their first meeting was a bit bad, she slowly understood him a bit. She knew that although he had a lot of tricks up his sleeve, he still took care of her. Even when he saw that she was young and ignorant and used her, she didn't hold a grudge against him. Later on, he helped her time and time again. He was clearly a person who didn't want to be tainted by the secular world, but he was willing to sacrifice his time to help her calculate the abacus. Even later on, when she drew a clear line between them for the big ice cube, he still helped her time and time again. He said that he would protect her, and he really did it. He even gave her his life. So, that man who smiled more beautifully than a girl, who spoke like a ruffian, who always thought that he was incomparably romantic and elegant, was he really going to disappear from her life like this? After being drenched in the rain for half a day, she finally couldn't bear the weight of her body and fell into the rain. She tightly held the bone whistle in her hand, as if it was something incomparably precious in the world, and she was afraid that it would be dirted by the muddy water. Before she closed her eyes, she muttered to herself, "Big Ice Cube, where are you? Dong Ting is injured, he doesn't want me anymore. Quickly help me find him back, find him back." A bolt of lightning once again cut through the sky, illuminating the world in an instant. She saw a handsome man wearing a blue monk's robe slowly walking out from the depths of the forest. When he saw the unconscious girl lying on the ground, he put his palms together and gently chanted, "Amit Ba." Chapter 1368. 2 days had passed. After Xiao Su had forced his way out of the palace, the security in the palace was even tighter than before. In the Sichuan emperor's bedroom, a teacup fell to the ground. "You're all a bunch of good-for-nothings. You can't even catch him. What's the point of keeping you all?" The Sichuan emperor's roar pierced through the palace and landed in the ears of the imperial guards kneeling outside. They couldn't help but shrink their shoulders. They had led soldiers to chase after Xiao Su and the others, but they had failed to catch him. They didn't know how Xiao Su and the others had escaped from the capital, but the Sichuan emperor was furious. "Your Majesty, please calm down. Don't bother with that bunch of good-for-nothings. Take care of your body." Consort Yu stood by his side with a bowl of medicine and comforted him in a soft voice. The imperial court had been in an uproar over the past 2 days because of the Fu and Liang families. The Sichuan emperor was so annoyed that he fainted on the dragon throne. "I don't want to bother with them, but they are useless. They didn't catch anyone, and instead let the tiger return to the mountain. Or do you know that I am removing obstacles for Ranner? If I don't deal with Xiao Su, I won't be at ease even if Ranner becomes the crown prince in the future." The Sichuan emperor patted the back of Consort Yu's hand as he spoke with disappointment. He was still angry. "I understand your Majesty's worries. Since these people are useless, why don't the imperial court's generals capture them? The Fu family has a few good men. Your Majesty can consider them." Consort Yu took the opportunity to recommend the Fu family to him with a smile on her face. She looked as if she was sharing his worries. The West Xian emperor's hand paused as he patted imperial concubine Yu's hand. His eyes dimmed slightly. He looked up at his beloved who was looking down at the bowl of medicine. She was gentle and delicate, as though she had walked out of the misty rain in Jiangnan. She had a hazy beauty. His features couldn't help but soften. You know how much the Fu family has been exposed recently. If I continue to use the Fu family, I'm afraid I won't be able to convince the public." Consort Yu's hand that was holding the bowl trembled. However, the Sichuan emperor's gaze was on her face and he didn't notice it. Consort Yu's lips curled up. Consort Yu's eyes. When she looked at the Sichuan emperor, her eyes. "Your Majesty, I was wrong. I shouldn't have made such unreasonable requests at this time. I only wanted them to atone for their crimes with merit. This time, they really went too far. I am very resentful in my heart. A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. This is the truth." Consort Yu knew that His Majesty was really going to attack the Fu family this time. He still asked her to serve by his side, because he valued their past relationship and sincerely wanted to help Ranner ascend the throne. Therefore, Consort Yu knew how to manipulate the Sichuan emperor's emotions. She immediately blamed herself. Her attitude showed that he pitied her the most. As expected, the Sichuan emperor was very satisfied that she was able to see clearly that he was the most important person in her heart. He reached out to touch her face and smiled. Tell Ranner to come back. I have something important for him to do. Consort Yu's eyes lit up. If His Majesty could mention something important, it meant that His Majesty was really going to cultivate Ranner's power. She immediately smiled gently. As you wish. At this moment, there was a commotion outside. I want to see His Majesty. How dare you stop me? Men, take them away and flog them 50 times. The Sichuan emperor frowned and asked the person beside him, who is making a ruckus outside? Eunuch Xiao immediately said, this old servant will go out and take a look right now. With that, Eunuch Xiao jogged out. Consort Yu lowered her eyes and curved her lips slightly. Empress Liang had come as expected. She had only purposely let someone leak the news to her, and she had rushed over. From the looks of it, she would definitely offend His Majesty later. What a good show. With that thought, Consort Yu fed the Sichuan emperor even more gently and meticulously. This made the Sichuan emperor very satisfied. Yu was still more to his liking. At this moment, Eunuch Xiao hurried in. Your Majesty, Her Majesty the Empress is requesting an audience. The Sichuan emperor's expression instantly turned ugly. I won't see her. It wasn't easy for us to be able to relax. We don't want her to cause trouble. Eunuch Xiao hesitated and tried to persuade him. The Empress had already been here several times, but she always came back empty-handed. This time, if she was invited back again, according to what she saw just now, she probably wouldn't let it go. At this moment, Consort Yu spoke. She looked at the Sichuan emperor with watery eyes. It seems that elder sister is also worried about your Majesty's health. If your Majesty doesn't allow elder sister to see you, elder sister will be sad again. The Sichuan emperor saw that she was so obedient and kind. He sighed softly. You're always so soft-hearted. Forget it, we'll see her. There are some things that need to be resolved. When he said the last sentence, a murderous look flashed across the Sichuan emperor's eyes. Eunuch Xiao looked gratefully at Consort Yu. Consort Yu was still the most considerate one. Then she quickly went to open the door. Consort Yu smiled proudly. Empress Liang was smart, but she didn't know how to win people's hearts. That was why she could be like a fish in water in the palace, while Empress Liang could only be a resentful woman. Empress Liang had received the news that Consort Yu had entered the palace to serve His Majesty. When she thought of how she had been refused the entrance several times, she felt resentful and impatiently rushed to the bedchamber. When she was stopped outside the palace again, she imagined the two people in the palace being lovey-dovey while she was treated coldly. Her heart instantly felt unbalanced. When she received the edict and entered, she remembered the Mama's instructions. She had been told to be gentle to attract His Majesty's attention. She had wanted to suppress her temper, but when she saw Consort Yu shamelessly snuggling up to His Majesty like a water snake, her temper flared up again. She walked with an aggressive aura. Greetings to your Majesty. She curtsied. Sichuan Emperor raised his hand. Empress rise. Sensing His Majesty's coldness, Empress Liang vented her anger on Consort Yu. Consort Yu, why aren't you curtsying when you see Ben Gong? Are you trying to climb over Ben Gong's head? Consort Yu immediately wanted to curtsy in terror when she heard this, but Sichuan Emperor stopped her. Consort Yu looked at him in shock. Sichuan Emperor felt even more pity for her. He looked at Empress Liang's angry face and said with a frown, Consort Yu is serving Zhen's medicine. Do you think Zhen is more senior than you? Are you trying to climb over Zhen's head? These words were like cold water that splashed Empress Liang's face white. Qinxie doesn't dare. Sichuan Emperor could only snort coldly when he heard this. At an angle that Sichuan Emperor wasn't paying attention, Consort Yu gave Empress Liang a threatening look that made her even angrier. Consort Yu felt that she had already achieved half of her goal, so she didn't want to stay any longer. She stood and said, Your Majesty, please calm down. Older sister didn't mean it. Older sister must have something important to discuss with your Majesty. You will take her leave first. With Empress Liang as a comparison, Sichuan Emperor felt that Consort Yu was even more polite and respectful. His disgust for Empress Liang increased. Go. Consort Yu curtsied and left. When she passed by Empress Liang, Sichuan Emperor gave her a mocking smile. If Sichuan Emperor wasn't present, Empress Liang really wanted to tear this slut's face apart. Chapter 1369. Consort Yu left the hall and walked down the long corridor with the palace servants. She stopped in front of a flower bed. She thought back to how she had just mentioned that the emperor had refused to let the soldiers of the Fu family in court take the order to capture Xiao Su. Her heart chilled. It looked like the emperor was determined to move against the Liang and Fu families this time. She knew His Majesty's motive for doing this, but how could she watch as the Fu family was sacrificed by His Majesty? Also, Ranner needed the support of the Fu family in the future. If he lost this support, how could he maintain a foothold in court? When she thought of this, a trace of viciousness flashed through Consort Yu's eyes. As though she had made a decision, Consort Yu's footsteps were no longer as light as before. Without imperial concubine Moon, Empress Liang's expression softened a great deal. But when she saw His Majesty's cold and indifferent attitude towards her, her heart filled with sorrow. However, she did not forget her goal in coming here. She took several steps forward and earnestly said, "Your Majesty, please uphold justice for this concubine." Uphold justice? Sichuan Emperor raised his eyelids. What do you want us to uphold justice for you? Empress Liang gritted her teeth and knelt down. Your Majesty, our Liang family has been wronged. My father and younger brothers are loyal and devoted to Sichuan. They would never do anything to betray your Majesty. You have to uphold justice for our Liang family. Also, what crime did Su'er commit? Why do you want to kill him? What crime did he commit? Sichuan Emperor glanced at her coolly. Empress, are you done? She had said so much in a humble voice, but His Majesty looked disinterested. Empress Liang was deeply hurt, but for the Liang family and Su'er, she could only suppress her grievances. She nodded. This concubine is done. If you are done, then return to your Chaoyang palace, Sichuan Emperor said coolly. Empress Liang's eyes widened. She looked up at the person lying on the bed, her eyes filled with disbelief. Your Majesty, you can't treat this concubine like this. You can't treat Su'er like this. He's your own flesh and blood. Your eldest son of the first wife. When you ascended the throne, our Liang family didn't work hard, but we also spent a lot of effort. You can't kill the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness and cut off the Liang family's path to survival. Sichuan Emperor's eyes turned cold in an instant. What he hated the most in his life was people using the past to threaten him. Which emperor would be willing to admit that he ascended the throne with the help of his relatives? Without a doubt, Liang Ho had crossed his bottom line. This was the difference between Liang Ho and Consort Yu. One was aggressive while the other pretended to be soft. Therefore, Liang Ho would never be able to win against Consort Yu. Empress, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. From his voice, it was obvious that the Sichuan Emperor was enraged. How could Empress Liang not understand? But at this time, if she retreated, the Liang family and Su'er's fate would be sealed. She looked up and said, Your Majesty, how has our Liang family wronged you? Su, or has conscientiously protected the Sichuan Empire for you? How has he not done well? This concubine has guarded the imperial harem for you. Even if you often stayed in the Moon Palace, this concubine has never complained to you. Why can't you be magnanimous and let us go? Liang Yuan, do you know what you are saying? Sichuan Emperor narrowed his eyes at her, hostility rising in his eyes. Do we need your permission to punish people? As the master of the imperial harem, you should know that the imperial harem cannot interfere in politics. At this time, Liang Ho's back stiffened when she was called by her full name. We are telling you this time, the Liang family will not be able to escape Sichuan's laws. No matter how you plead, we will not change our mind. She thought that His Majesty would not pursue the Liang family's mistakes on account of their past relationship. However, she was wrong. His Majesty had wanted to get rid of the Liang family from the beginning. It was just that he never had the right time, so he kept delaying it. Now that the Liang family and Fu family's crimes were brought to the table, it proved that he wanted to deal with them boldly and decisively. But Su'er is our flesh and blood. Do you also want to exterminate him? Liang Ho tightly grasped at this life-saving straw, hoping that he would change his mind. Sichuan Emperor sneered. Empress, you should know that we do not want him to take the position of crown prince more than anyone else. Put away your thoughts. Your beautiful dream of working with your Liang family to push him onto the throne will end here. For the sake of Consort that slut son, you will not even care about your own eldest son? Your Majesty, you cannot be so biased. Empress Liang's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Her voice was mournful. Sichuan Emperor said coldly, Empress, you should know that we stepped over the corpses of our brothers to get to this position. When it is time to sacrifice, we must sacrifice. Liang Ho stared blankly at the man in front of her, whom she had loved all her life. She vaguely remembered that when he came back from horseback, he was a handsome young man with picturesque features. Now in the blink of an eye, his eyebrows were covered with frost. He was murderous and cold. Now he would not even spare his own son. So, a while ago, when I was not feeling well, you told people not to disturb me and often went to check on me, making me mistakenly think that you doted on me. In fact, you wanted to cut me off from the outside world. So when you attacked the Liang family and Su'er, I knew nothing about it. It was all for today. Empress Liang's sorrowful expression was no longer as arrogant and despotic as before. Sichuan Emperor's anger subsided a little. He nodded and admitted, that's right. Empress Liang collapsed to the ground and covered her face with her hands. This was the person she had poured her heart of love into and risked her life to love. Now he was not even willing to lie to her. Chaoji, present. Send the Empress back to Chaoyang Palace. Without our permission, she is not allowed to take a step out of the palace. Eunuch Xiao was stunned. Was His Majesty planning to put the Empress under house arrest? Under His Majesty's cold gaze, Eunuch Xiao immediately ordered his men to take Empress Liang away. Hearing this, Empress Liang's heart was in chaos. She cried and shouted, What's so good about Consort you? Is it worth your Majesty doing this for her? I can't accept it. Haven't you seen what I've done for you all these years? Why are you doing this to me? Have you forgotten the vow under the moon that you will never forget me? Sichuan Emperor looked at her with a cold gaze. Liang Yuan, our Majesty has never admired you. Our Majesty likes the Liang family behind you. You is the only woman our Majesty cares about. These words were more violent than a bolt from the blue. Empress Liang was shocked and stood in place. She looked straight at him as if she was looking at a stranger. So everything is fake? You used me, you used our Liang family, and you even used Su'er as a stepping stone for your great empire? Just to be a stepping stone for your good son? You can think of it that way. Sichuan Emperor did not want to talk to her anymore. He waved his hand and ordered his men to take her away. Empress Liang stood up shakily. The shock and bitterness in her eyes slowly turned into hatred. Your Majesty, you are so cruel. If there was no hatred in Empress Liang's eyes, she would not believe that there would be white hair in the world. Chapter 1370. When Consort Yu found out about Liang Ho's situation, most of the gloom in her heart dissipated. Haha, Liang Yuan, you want to fight with me? You're still far from it. Don't you know who I am? How could a woman who grew up in a secluded courtyard compare to her experiences in the outside world? At this moment, Jade Rabbit entered the hall. She curtsied in front of Consort Yu and softly said, Your Highness, His Highness has returned. Consort Yu's eyes lit up. Let him in quickly. Not long after, Xiao Ran came in covered in dust. He frowned slightly as he looked at the person who had stood up to greet him. Mother, I is still searching for Qingyan's whereabouts. Why did you call I back in such a hurry? Did something happen? How could Consort Yu not know what he was thinking? She smiled and said, Mother knows that you're anxious about Chu Qingyan's matter. But your Imperial Father has something important to tell you. Imperial Father is looking for I? Xiao Ran's eyes lit up. He planned to immediately go to his Imperial Father's quarters. Ranner, why are you in such a hurry? Your imperial father is in the palace. Are you afraid that you won't be able to find him? Consort Yu immediately pulled him back when she saw him in such a hurry. Xiao Ran was a bit confused. Didn't you say that imperial father has something to do? I will go and see what's going on first before leaving the city to find Qingyan. Consort Yu was displeased when she saw that he was so focused on Chu Qingyan. She shook her head and sighed. As expected, a grown son can't keep his mother. She can't even let her son accompany me. Xiao Ran's face turned red when he heard this. He grabbed Consort Yu's loosened hand and said shamelessly, Mother, I didn't mean that. You're the person that I cares about the most. Consort Yu became happy when she heard this. She then took her precious son's hand and sat down on the couch. She patted the back of his hand and reminded, Mother knows that you want that girl from the Chu family to accompany you, but whether you can keep her or not depends on your imperial father's intentions. The matter that your imperial father gave you this time definitely has something to do with Xiao Su. No matter what, you have to agree to it, and follow your imperial father's wishes. Only then can we have a good life. After she said this, Xiao Mother's words, Mother, why do you say that? Doesn't imperial fathers most? Consort Yu smiled softly. Ranara, Mother is going to teach you a lesson today. The emperor's heart is hard to predict. If you want to have a foothold in the imperial palace, then you have to follow the wishes of the person who holds the imperial power. Otherwise, your eldest brother's end and Empress Liang's end will be our end. She knew that the Sichuan emperor had feelings for her, but the most fickle thing in the world was the human heart. She couldn't guarantee that he would treat her the same for the rest of her life. Otherwise, the Fu family's matter wouldn't have become so big. He doted on her, but at the same time, he was the ruler of a country. In his heart, the country was more important than the family. If the small family implicated the country, then all of his feelings would dissipate. The reason why he doted on her was because she wasn't like Empress Liang, who was unreasonable and interfered with the court. If there was a day when she was involved, she would become the second Empress Liang. She was able to become the imperial concubine, because she saw things more clearly than Empress Liang. She wasn't like her who didn't care at all and had her bones crushed in the end. Xiao Ran nodded as if he understood. He had always been obedient since he was young, and his mother would never harm him. Today Mother is saying these things to I. Is there something you want I to do? Consort Yu nodded in satisfaction. Her son was very smart and immediately understood her intentions. With Chu Qingyan's status, your imperial father will never let her become your empress. However, if you want her to stay by your side, it's not impossible, unless you already have a prince's consort. Does Mother mean that imperial father is worried that I will put Qingyan in the position of consort, so he summoned I back and stopped I from looking for her? Xiao Ran understood immediately and his eyes were filled with surprise. Consort Yu nodded. Based on her experience of following the emperor for so many years, she knew that he was a very controlling person. The reason he liked her and Ranner was because they were obedient. Therefore, when it came to Ranner's marriage, he definitely wouldn't allow Ranner to make his own decisions. If you want to keep Chu Qingyan after everything is settled, then you have to settle the marriage first. Originally, the wedding was supposed to be held in 2 days, but because of the delay, it couldn't be held as scheduled. Your imperial father probably wants to talk to you about this matter. I'm afraid that you will argue with his imperial majesty, so I called you here in advance. I'm afraid that you will ruin things. Consort Yu naturally knew how her son felt about Chu Qingyan. Before, he had agreed to the marriage with the Jing family because he had no choice. Now that Xiao Su had escaped from the palace, the court was going to be reshuffled. She was afraid that he wouldn't understand and bring up the old matter again. If he refused the marriage, then he would offend his imperial majesty. I understand, imperial mother, don't worry. Indeed, it was just as his mother had said. He needed the support of a powerful relative. Xiao Ren already had a plan in his heart. He would leave the position of a concubine for Qingyan. She was so considerate. She should be able to understand his difficulties. As long as you understand imperial mother's painstaking efforts, that's enough. Consort Yu looked at her son in front of her, and felt more and more satisfied. In a secluded courtyard, it was a bit shabby, but it was good because of vines and green leaves that kept the heat away. It was cool under the shade of the trees. Xiao just sat there, playing with the exquisite chains and listening to the reports of his subordinates. The news that the King of England broke out of the palace was suppressed by His Imperial Majesty. Now very few people know that His Imperial Majesty is going to make a move on the King of England. Even though the capital is heavily guarded, Xiao Ran and Li Weiyuan led soldiers out of the city to chase after him. To the outside world, they say that a thief broke into the palace and that they were ordered to capture him. What else? Today, Xiao Ran went into the palace and talked with His Imperial Majesty behind closed doors for an entire afternoon. Then it was announced that in 2 days, Xiao Ran will be engaged to the Jing family. After the engagement, Xiao Ran will personally lead soldiers to chase after the escaped assassins. After the report, the spy lowered his head and waited for orders. Xiao laughed lightly. His imperial father was taking advantage of the chaos to stabilize Xiao Ran's power. He wanted to let the people in court know who he valued, so that they wouldn't alienate Xiao Ran because of the Fu family. Xiao Ran was the only one who could make imperial father spend so much effort to dote on her since she was young. Didn't he want to suppress the news? This prince won't let him do as he wishes. Go and have people spread the news that His Imperial Majesty framed the King of England. Because of his merits, he wants to get rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. Moreover, if he wants to make a move on Liang Fu and the Liang family, then let's add fuel to the fire. When the time comes, let's see how he will deal with it. Yes, this subordinate will do it right away. These 2 fires were not only for him, but also for his eldest brother. If he made the water muddy, then his imperial father wouldn't have so much energy to deal with his eldest brother. After the spy left, Xiao stroked the chains in his hand and smiled lightly. Little rascal, I'm going to start my revenge. You have to stay with me and don't go too far. Chapter 1371. After that heavy rain, Chu Qingyan began to have a fever. She was unconscious for 2 whole days, and only woke up on the morning of the 3rd day. She opened her heavy eyelids, but the sunlight was too dazzling. She immediately closed her eyes and waited for her eyes to adapt to the light before slowly sitting up. Her entire body was sore as if she had been crushed by something, but this was not the main point. Everything in front of her was very unfamiliar. Although the simple and crude house was small and tidy, it still made her vigilant. Just as she was propping up her aching head, the wooden door creaked. Someone had pushed the door open and entered. She immediately pulled out the hairpin in her hair. If the person did not come with good intentions, she would directly throw it. However, to her surprise, the person who came was an old granny. She was holding a bowl in her hand. While she was stunned, the old granny said in surprise, "Miss, you're awake. You scared this old granny. I thought you were going to continue sleeping." Because her skills had improved, she could tell from the old granny's walking and breathing that she did not practice martial arts, and was just an ordinary woman. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief and return a smile. "Was it Granny who saved me?" The old granny walked in front of her and handed the bowl to her. "It wasn't Granny. It was the Great Master who saved you. This is the medicine that the Great Master asked this old granny to brew for you. Quickly drink it so that your illness can quickly recover." Chu Qingyan obediently nodded. After drinking the medicine, she found out that she had been drenched in the rain and had a high fever. Fortunately, someone had saved her, otherwise she would have died in the wilderness. The Great Master that the old granny spoke of was an enlightened monk. He had saved her before, so she called him her benefactor. This time, he was passing by the forest and brought her to the old granny to take care of her. An enlightened monk? In her impression, there seemed to be such a person. As if to confirm her guess, the sound of the pagoda bell came from outside the door. She was thinking about Su Yi when a green monk robe appeared in her line of sight. Although the material was ordinary, it was very neat and did not have a single crease on it. Chu Qingyan slowly raised her head and looked at the tall figure standing in the middle of the room. His sleeves were gently swaying, his posture leisurely. His features were white, like spring plums blooming with snow. His temperament was clean and holy, like autumn chrysanthemums covered in frost. It was as if as long as he appeared, Lotus flowers would bloom wherever he passed. Almsgiver Chu, how have you been? His gentle voice was like the gentle recitation of Buddhist scriptures, washing away all distracting thoughts. Only his voice remained, echoing in one's ears. Chu Qingyan smiled bitterly. Do you think I've been well since we last met? When the other party heard this, she also felt that it was inappropriate. When she was thinking about what to say instead, she chuckled and thought to herself, this person is still so easy to fool. Long time no see, Xiujian. The person who was deep in thought heard the joy in her depressed mood, and for some reason, her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled and said, it has indeed been a long time. The old lady knew that she shouldn't disturb the two of them, so she took the empty bowl and left. Chu Qingyan retracted her gaze from the old lady's back. Since she knew that he was the one who saved her, there was nothing to worry about. She leaned against the bed wall and looked up at Xiujian with a grateful smile. Thank you for saving me. Otherwise, I really would have become food for the wild beasts on the mountain. Seeing that she could still joke around, Xiujian's heart, which had been hanging in the air for the past few days, finally relaxed. He sat down on the wooden chair and said modestly, it's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. Chu Qingyan looked at him. Even though he was sitting on an old chair with missing legs, it still gave the illusion that he was sitting on a lotus platform. She sighed in her heart. As expected, his looks were good. Everything he did was different from others. She chuckled and said, it seems that saving people is a common occurrence to you. It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. Xiujian heard the teasing in her voice. It seemed that he would say this every time he saw her. He couldn't help but laugh. Buddhism is about delivering all living beings from torment. When one is in trouble, one should help. This is the so-called saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. It seems that just saving me is enough for you to build a 10-storied pagoda. Chu Qingyan teased. Perhaps because they had interacted a few times, he was moved by her familiar tone and couldn't help but agree. Benefactor Chu is right. It seems that this poor monk can complete the great cause of pagoda by staying by Benefactor Chu's side in the future. Chu Qingyan chuckled when she heard this. It seemed that this person wasn't ignorant. She nodded and said generously, well said, well said. Seeing her relaxed expression, Xiujian also smiled. Then he asked in confusion, why did Benefactor Chu faint on Mount Feng? After hearing this, her eyes darkened. We were being hunted down and had been running for our lives. We didn't expect to end up here by accident. She thought of Dongting, who had left without saying goodbye. Her head hurt even more, and she was enveloped in grief. Xiujian could clearly sense her low spirits. His gaze fell on her face. The shadows cast by her thick and long eyelashes covered her eyes. He didn't know what she was thinking at the moment. However, after not seeing her for so many months, she had grown a lot taller. Her chin was sharper, and she looked even more beautiful than Water Spirit. This was one of the few words of praise he had learned about women in the past decade or two. This poor monk heard some news these past few days. It said that His Majesty was attacked by an assassin. The entire capital is on high alert, searching for the assassin. Yesterday, this poor monk saw guards appear in the mountains. Chu Qingyan's lips curled into a mocking smile when she heard this. That was Sichuan Emperor crying thief. She raised her head and asked him, Xiujian, if I said that the person they wanted to capture was me, would you hand me over? Xiujian looked at the woman sitting upright on the bed. Her gaze was calm, and her expression was indifferent as she looked back at him. It was as if she wasn't asking about her own life or death, but rather an unimportant question. This girl who was so calm and collected made his brows soften. He put his palms together and said, this poor monk is a monk. I don't care about the secular world, and I definitely won't interfere with the disputes of the imperial family. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Did he mean that he knew what had happened between them and Sichuan Emperor? But then she thought about how he was a charlatan. He could divine anything he wanted to know, so she wasn't surprised. Thank you, Xiujian. She had been testing him just now, and his reaction had made her heave a sigh of relief. She could not fall into the hands of the West Xian Arch and the others again. Otherwise, it would be a waste of Big Ice Cube's effort to save her. Xiao smiled faintly. Xiao, can you find out news about the capital? She was now a target of arrest and couldn't easily show herself. Thus, she placed her hopes on him. Xiao shook his head. This poor monk can't interfere with the secular world. He had already made an exception by saving her. He couldn't make another exception. Chu Qingyan knew that she had made things difficult for him, so she settled for the next best thing. Then can you get someone to help me look for my companion? He got separated from me at Phoenix Mountain. Xiao hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded as he looked into her bright eyes. This poor monk will do his best. Thank you. Chu Qingyan thanked him with reddened eyes. Because she had been seriously ill and had spoken for so long, she was already exhausted. Xiao didn't stay any longer. He told her to rest well, and left the room. Standing outside the room, Xiao looked at the rosy clouds on the horizon after the storm and sighed softly. Her friend was probably no longer at Phoenix Mountain. The pagoda bell rang in the distance. Chu Qingyan slowly fell asleep to the faint sound. Perhaps she would never know in this lifetime that Xiao's appearance in the forest to save her wasn't an accident. He had only come down the mountain because he had divined that she was in trouble. Chapter 1372. After staying in the wooden hut for another 2 days, Chu Qingyan felt that her body was recovering very slowly. In the past, she would have recovered in less than 2 days, but this time, for some reason, it took so long. As she thought about it, she started coughing again, as if she wanted to cough out her lungs. At this moment, footsteps sounded from outside. She could tell that the old granny had come in. As expected. Miss, you're coughing again. Quickly drink this medicine. The old granny handed her a bowl of medicine with the fragrance of loquats. Chu Qingyan gratefully took it. After spending a few days together, she found out from the old granny that this was the mountainside of Mount Feng. Because the wooden hut was built in a remote area, very few people would pass by here except for the common people who chopped firewood. She finally understood why Su Jian had arranged for her to recuperate here. This was indeed a safe place. Seeing that she had finished drinking, the old granny went out again, saying that she was going to make chicken soup for her to nourish her body. Chu Qingyan felt very apologetic. It was very difficult for farmers to raise poultry. They would not easily slaughter chickens and ducks until the end of the year. They had only met by chance, but this old granny treated her like her own granddaughter. This made her feel very touched. She repeatedly told the old granny not to worry, but the old granny said that this was a task entrusted to her by the great master, so she had to take good care of herself no matter what. She felt very helpless. This old granny's words were always based on false opinions. It seemed that she had been poisoned by the fraud. She did not know how long she had been in a daze. When she came back to her senses, she saw the person standing by the door. She did not know how long he had been standing there, and how much of her embarrassment had been seen by him. Chu Qingyan said embarrassedly, "Why didn't you say that you were here?" He had already knocked on the door before, but she did not hear him. However, seeing her unnatural expression, he did not expose her and walked in with a faint smile. Benefactor noticed this poor monk as soon as he entered. Although she had corrected him many times to let him call her by her name, it was a pity that this person's brain was as stubborn as a wooden fish. In the end, she let him be and did not care what he called her. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. She invited him to sit down and personally poured a cup of tea for him. "How has your body been these past 2 days?" Su Jian casually asked when he saw that she was able to land. She was just about to say that she was almost better, but her body was singing the opposite tune. She began to cough violently, and her eyes were red. Su Jian's eyes were filled with worry. He didn't know how to help her, and could only quietly wait for her to return to normal. Chu Qingyan said apologetically, "This illness comes like a landslide. I've made a fool of myself." Su Jian faintly smiled. "It's normal for people to suffer from diseases. Benefactor, you don't need to feel sorry." Chu Qingyan nodded. She had taken his advice to heart. "Thank you for taking care of me these past 2 days. The person taking care of you is an elderly person. This penniless monk doesn't dare claim credit, Su Jian said with a smile. She thought about it and agreed but still said, the old man took care of me because of you. In the end, I still owe you a favor. Su Jian saw how persistent she was and smiled. He didn't continue the conversation and changed the topic. Benefactor, do you have something on your mind? Chu Qingyan raised her head when she heard his words. She happened to see her own confused and helpless expression in his clear eyes. How could he tell? She felt that it was strange, but when she thought about how good he was at fortune-telling, which meant that he could see through people's hearts, she didn't find it strange. Yes, I'm worried about a lot of things. She nodded honestly. Su Jian frowned slightly. When he was standing by the door earlier, he had sensed that she was in low spirits. It seemed that this was the crux of her illness. The sky is clear after the rain. Do you want to go out for a walk? Su Jian invited her. She was a little surprised, but when she remembered that she hadn't left the house since she came here, she agreed. 3 years ago, this penniless monk passed by here and met an elderly person. After learning that her family had passed away, this penniless monk settled her down here. Chu Qingyan didn't know why he would mention that elderly woman. She blinked and replied, this place is beautiful and quiet. It's suitable for retirement. You've chosen a good place. Su Jian smiled faintly. Actually, whether or not it's suitable for retirement depends on the elderly person's state of mind. If she's immersed in the pain of the past, this place will just be a prison for her. However, this penniless monk is very glad that the elderly person is an open-minded person. She hasn't become dispirited because of the pain of losing her family. She's always smiling and doesn't suffer from illness or misfortune. At first, she was still able to maintain her composure. However, towards the end, she couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth. This person seemed to be insinuating something about her between the lines. What are you trying to say? Su Jian raised his eyes, but his gaze didn't fall on her. Instead, it fell on the blooming camellia behind her. Benefactor, you're drawing a circle around a prison. She was stunned. She hadn't expected him to expose her so directly. At this moment, Su Jian's gaze shifted from the beautiful camellia flowers to the face in front of him that was even more delicate than the flowers. He calmly looked straight into her eyes. Benefactor, time flies. Since yesterday's matter is already in the past, why let it disturb your state of mind? Whether it's guilt, self-blame, or dejection and distress, life still has to go on. The sun still rises in the east and sets in the west. Don't let the prison in your heart hold you back from moving forward. In the end, it will become an even heavier shackle. Chu Qingyan was stunned by his words. She didn't know if it was because he often preached about Buddhism, but she had to admit that every word he said touched the bottom of her heart. Everything that had happened in the past few days had imperceptibly destroyed her self-confidence. She had always thought that as long as she was willing to work hard and improve herself, she would be able to stay by Big Ice Cube's side. She fantasized about standing shoulder to shoulder with him. She didn't want to be a burden to him. She wanted to be a barrier that could shelter him from the wind and rain when he was tired or weak. However, this hope was blown to pieces by the storm. She had always been protected, whether it was Big Ice Cube, Dongting, or Turin and Water Spirit. Dongting had faced death alone because of her. Turin and Water Spirit had died because of her. She couldn't help anyone, but she was a burden to those who had good intentions for her. In this hot summer, she felt cold all over. She couldn't help but slowly crouch down with her arms around her shoulders. Su Jian, I know my own limits. I thought I could protect everyone, but in the end, I became a burden. It was I who implicated those who sincerely treated me. Su Jian was stunned by her sad words. He had long known that there was a prison in her heart, but he didn't know that she had imprisoned herself so deeply. Looking at the woman who was only in her prime, but her face seemed to have weathered the vicissitudes of life. Su Jian's calm heart was suddenly moved by the sadness that flashed through her eyes. Her inner demon had already been born. If it was allowed to run rampant, it would be difficult to help her in the future. Chapter 1373. Benefactor, don't be sad. Blaming yourself won't solve the problem. Su Jian stood by her side, his voice even gentler. I can see that you've done your best. Things are out of your control now. It's better to let nature take its course. I know you're comforting me, but I still can't get over it. Chu Qingyan buried her head between her knees and said hoarsely. The source of all her guilt was panic. She was afraid that her companions who had fought side by side in the past would sacrifice themselves for her. This was something she didn't want to see. More importantly, she couldn't face the big block of ice. She would rather stay here and seal herself up. You're running away, benefactor. Even if you don't want to face it now, things are still going forward. It's constantly affecting the people around you with uncontrollable factors. What you've lost can't be regained, but those who haven't lost can still be saved. If you're addicted to self-imprisonment, by the time you figure it out, it may be too late to save it. Hearing her muttering and combining it with the discussions he heard from the pilgrims who had entered and left the temple in the past 2 days, Su Jian roughly knew what she was worried about and blaming herself for. He put his palms together and continued softly. I advise you not to cherish your gold-threaded robe. When you're young, you should pluck the flowers when they're blooming. Don't wait until the flowers are gone. Su Jian's words caused Chu Qingyan to be slightly stunned. It was as if the dark clouds had suddenly parted to reveal the sun. You're right. Everyone is risking their lives for me. How can I have the nerve to be sad here? This is not my character. If they know, Turin will definitely say that I'm thinking too much, and Dongting will definitely scold me for being pretentious. She looked up at him with sparkling eyes. They were brighter than the scorching sun on the horizon. Her petite body shrank into a small ball in front of him. His usually calm heart was stirred by this person who was like a blazing sun. He wanted to reach out to touch her head to comfort her, but when his fingers were about to reach out, he suddenly realized that his actions were out of his expectations. He couldn't help but withdraw his hand. Instead, he grasped the prayer beads on his wrist and plucked them one by one, trying to calm his heart. Benefactor, it's best that you can think it through. I'm just giving a few pointers. The most important thing is benefactor's own mentality. The corners of her mouth curled up, and the confidence in her eyes slowly returned. Her eyes were like camellias covered in dew, so beautiful and dazzling. Su Jian's eyebrows twitched, and he turned around in a panic. He tried to recite the Heart Sutra to calm the strange feeling in his heart. Chu Qingyan didn't notice Su Jian's strange behavior. She let out a sigh of relief. Su Jian, thank you for your pointers. Otherwise, I might not have been able to get over this hurdle. Perhaps by the time I wake up, everything would have already reached a point of no return. That would have wasted the efforts of those who did it for me. Benefactor is a person of great wisdom. It's only a matter of time before you walk out. Su Jian replied absent-mindedly. She felt that it was amazing that this slow-witted charlatan could say such nice things. But since he had helped her, she didn't want to tease him. She directly told him her plan. Su Jian, I'll rest for another day. Tomorrow, I'll set out to find my companions. If it weren't for her severe cough, she would have left immediately. Hearing that she was leaving, Su Jian immediately turned around and looked down at the person who was hugging her knees and looking at him innocently. He couldn't help but say, your body hasn't recovered yet. You still need a few days to rest. No need. After thinking it through, I'm eager to return home. Chu Qingyan smiled at him. She didn't notice the flash of disappointment in his eyes. She looked into the distance. They were halfway up the mountain, so the view was excellent. A worried look appeared in her eyes as she continued. I wonder where they are now. I heard that the imperial court has sent troops out of the city to hunt them down. They haven't caught anyone yet, Su Jian replied indifferently. Chu Qingyan's eyes brightened. It seemed that they had already left the city. That couldn't be better. In her happiness, she didn't notice that Su Jian had said that he wouldn't meddle in the affairs of the mortal world. Thank you, Su Jian. She thanked him again. After putting down the heavy burden in her heart, she hadn't rested well for the past few days. Now tiredness surged into her eyes. She yawned. It seems that I can catch up on sleep today before continuing on my journey. Then why are benefactors still squatting on the ground? My legs are numb. After Chu Qingyan returned to her room, Su Jian stood next to the camellia tree with a blank expression. Today, as he spent time with Chu Qingyan, a strange feeling welled up in his heart. It was an emotion that he had never felt in so many years. It was as if he pitied her when she was sad, worried when she was in pain, and reluctant when she wanted to leave. There was a voice in his heart telling him that he shouldn't have such thoughts, but he didn't reject this feeling. Strictly speaking, Chu Qingyan was just a passerby he met by chance on his path to Buddha. He shouldn't have paid too much attention to her. However, his master had once told him that there was a calamity in his life, and Chu Qingyan was his calamity. So in these years he had more or less paid attention to her. At first he didn't take it to heart, but when he saved her again, he found that something seemed to be different. This difference was beyond his understanding. That was why he was standing there, unable to figure it out. Chu Qingyan returned to her room. When she stretched and was about to catch up on sleep, she passed by the window and saw the elegant and upright figure. She couldn't help but sigh. It was a pity that such a handsome male idol had escaped into Buddhism. How many unmarried girls had bitten their handkerchiefs in pity. At this time, the handsome male idol happened to turn around. Their eyes met in midair. Chu Qingyan instinctively smiled at him, but he unexpectedly fled. She couldn't help but reach out to touch her face. Was she so ugly that she couldn't be seen? This fraud's taste was really strange. Chu Qingyan angrily went to catch up on her sleep. However, until the next day, when Chu Qingyan was about to leave with her bag, she didn't see the fraud. She touched her nose. She had clearly told him the time to leave. Didn't he plan to see her off? After a while, the old man said that he might be too busy at the temple to leave. Chu Qingyan thought about it and agreed. So she bid farewell to the reluctant old man. If she could come back again, she would definitely repay the old man for taking care of her. Chu Qingyan's heart was relieved. The burden was lifted, and her illness was mostly recovered. Chu Qingyan tightened her bag and went down the mountain through the hidden mountain path. Not far away, a man in blue stood in the wind, watching the delicate figure slowly go away. Buddhist disciples should be empty in all 4 aspects, and shouldn't have 7 emotions and 6 desires. In order to get rid of the emotions he shouldn't have, he chose not to see her. Perhaps when they met again, he would still be a Buddhist monk without any distracting thoughts. Chapter 1374. Because of the special situation, Chu Qingyan had asked the old man for a few men's clothes when she went down the mountain. At this time, she was dressed as a man and was walking around the town. This was the town closest to the capital. If she wanted to gather information, this was undoubtedly the best place. The distance was close and the information could be delivered in time. Because she was wearing coarse hemp clothes, she would be more eye-catching if she wore a curtain hat. So she decided to openly show her appearance and found a place to sit down in a tea house. She drank tea while asking for information. Perhaps she had underestimated her appearance. When she entered the tea house, the people who were talking suddenly stopped and stared at her. Because most of them were commoners, they didn't know what was reserved, so their gazes were very bold. Moreover, at some point, many young women had entered the tea house. From time to time, they would use handkerchiefs to cover their faces and coquettishly throw coquettish glances at her. They had ulterior motives. Not only were there coquettish glances, there were also cold eyes. When some young talents saw this face that was more beautiful than a woman's, they couldn't help but secretly despise him. Sissy, what was there to be proud of? But when they saw that he was dressed like he came from a poor family, their hearts felt more balanced. What kind of girl would like this kind of poor boy? The streets were filled with people of Jianghu and many of them were wearing curtain hats. Chu Qingyan held her forehead. She had miscalculated. No matter what, she should have worn a curtain hat to cover her face. Fortunately, no matter how brazen these people were, they didn't dare to approach her. With her shabby appearance, the men didn't want to make friends with her, and the women only wanted to look. This was also good. So she was in the mood to pay attention to the news around her. Have you heard? His Majesty is preparing to make a move against His Royal Highness. He is using some false charges to deprive him of the title of Lord. A few days ago, news came that His Majesty had already secretly raided the King of England's residence. Sigh. Poor His Royal Highness has served the country all his life, but now he has met with this kind of end. How sad. She didn't expect to hear news about the big ice cube so quickly. Chu Qingyan was first surprised, but then she carefully sipped her tea and listened. Isn't that right? This is called the bow is put away after the birds are gone, and the hound is boiled. Take a look. Is there anyone who can survive under the eyes of the emperor? Hearing this, Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. The people were not blind and could tell right from wrong. Now that there was peace within and outside the country, the Sichuan emperor came up with this plan of getting rid of the donkey the moment it left the millstone. This was too evil. At this moment, another voice sounded. That's right. Isn't our current peace and prosperity all because of His Royal Highness and his soldiers sacrificing their lives for us? Now that I've heard of his fate, it's truly heartbreaking. But you said that His Royal Highness wasn't sent by the Empress? Logically speaking, he should be the future heir to the throne. Why does His Majesty treat him like this? Someone raised a question. When someone asked, someone answered. Isn't it simple? Because His Majesty doesn't like His Royal Highness and wants his youngest son, the fourth prince, to inherit the throne. So he wants to get rid of this stumbling block. That's why he wants to punish him. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan was shocked. She didn't think that these people's imaginations were so good that they could actually guess the truth. It was simply 80 to 90% accurate. His Royal Highness is really pitiful. Fortunately, he has safely escaped from the capital. Otherwise, our entire family wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully. An old man sighed heavily at this time. The originally noisy tea house was silent for a moment because of this. The tea in her mouth suddenly became bitter and astringent. Chu Qingyan's expression was sad. Being with the emperor was like being with a tiger. Who knew that one moment you were extremely favored, the next moment you would be thrown into a quagmire? Originally, he just wanted to protect his home and country, but now he had fallen into a state of hiding. It was really sad. Fortunately, the people weren't easy to fool. They were grateful for the contributions that Big Ice Cube had made over the years. They didn't believe those unfavorable rumors. Instead, they cleared his name. Fortunately, Big Ice Cube's efforts over the years hadn't been in vain. She suppressed the chaotic emotions in her heart and continued to calmly listen to the chatter in the tea house. After sitting here for an entire afternoon, she heard some reliable news. Xiao Ran was already engaged to the Jing Mingzhu. In 3 months, he would officially marry Jing Mingzhu. Chu Qingyan raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a mocking smile. Was this what he meant by liking her? She didn't like to share her husband with others, let alone someone who had 3 wives and 4 concubines. She hoped that in the future he would give up on her. Yesterday, Xiao Ran had already been ordered to become the commander of the army to hunt down Big Ice Cube. He had 30,000 imperial guards by his side, all of whom were skilled in martial arts. This time, the Sichuan emperor was determined to kill this son of his. Chu Qingyan didn't want to stay any longer. After finding out the direction of the army, she immediately put down the silver and turned to leave. The girls who were pretending to drink tea but were actually admiring the beauty saw her leave. They bit their handkerchiefs reluctantly and could only leave one after another. Only the owner of the tea house was counting the silver and smiling so hard that his molars could be seen. However, in the tea house, Pang Huang held a teacup and a trace of light flashed through his eyes. He had worn out iron shoes in fruitless search, but now he found her without any effort. Originally, he had been looking for Chu Qingyan for a few days without any news. He had planned to follow the advice of his subordinates and return home. He hadn't expected to run into her in the tea house. When they were on the battlefield, she was dressed as a man, so when she came in he immediately recognized her. That feeling of blood boiling filled his body again. He tightly gripped the teacup and revealed a smile. Send people to keep an eye on her, but don't let her find out. She is very vigilant, so if you lose her, this prince will hold you responsible. Yes. Someone immediately replied, and went downstairs to arrange it. As the footsteps faded away, Pang Huang looked down through the window. He could see that outstanding-looking person walking down the street like she was taking a stroll. The desire to imprison her under his eyes became stronger and stronger. Chu Qingyan, he had to have her. Chu Qingyan did not know that she was being watched. She found a ready-made clothing store and bought 2 sets of men's clothes. She also bought a curtain hat and put it on. Under the greedy gaze of the shop's lady boss, who wanted to keep her as a son-in-law, Chu Qingyan quickly left. In this world, when they saw a piece of fresh meat, they were all like wolves and tigers. This was simply too terrifying. After she teased herself a few times in her heart, she found an inn on the side of the road to rest her feet. Big Ice Cube must be very worried if he didn't see her. She had to meet up with him as soon as possible. When the sun rose the next day, she checked out of the room and quickly left with her bag. Not long after she left, a group of people came out of the inn and quickly followed her. Chapter 1375. Although she was wearing men's clothes and could avoid the soldiers holding the portraits, for safety's sake, she didn't walk on the main road and took small paths. Moreover, according to the fierce cavalry's style, it was impossible for them to expose themselves in front of everyone. So she did her best to choose a hidden path. She had bought some dry rations beforehand, so if she was hungry, she would take it out to fill her stomach. If she was thirsty, she would find a stream to drink. She had already learned her wilderness survival skills when she was in Lian City. The fierce valiant cavalry were hidden guards that did not appear in the open, and they had to adapt to all kinds of environments. Sometimes, in order to obtain information, they had to stay in the wild grass for 3 days and 3 nights without moving. In those few years, she had also trained with them, not only to improve her own abilities, but also to be able to deal with any sudden situations. Thinking back to those times, although it was a bit bitter, it was very fulfilling and filled her with nostalgia. She tightly gripped the water bottle in her hand. No matter what, she had to find them. However, at this time she felt that something was off. Her eyes fell onto the swaying leaves not far away and her eyes narrowed. She pretended to casually drink a mouthful of water, but she already had a plan in her heart. She thought that she had changed her clothes and darkened her face, but she was still being watched. After resting for a bit and recovering her strength, she pretended not to notice the other side's tracks before continuing forward with her bag. This time she chose a more remote and narrow mountain path. Like this, if the other side wanted to avoid being discovered, they wouldn't dare follow too closely. Like this, she would have enough time to hide herself. After a few blinks of an eye, there was already no one in front of her. Peng Huang stood on the mountain path and looked at the endless green forest. He gave a soft snort. She definitely hasn't gone far. You guys split up. I don't believe this prince can't catch her. After a few leaps, Chu Qingyan stopped on a huge rock under a tree. She fanned herself with her hand, thinking that she had shaken them off. She heaved a sigh of relief and wanted to strike while the iron was hot to continue her journey. However, her ears twitched, and she stopped in her tracks. Several large men with cold expressions appeared in front of her. She took a few steps back and found that there were several people blocking her path. She knit her brows, knowing that it was the group of people following her. Who are you? What are you trying to do? Although these people were dressed like Sichuan people, their appearance was rough, and their bodies were stronger than the Sichuan people. She guessed that these people were not Sichuan people at all. These people didn't intend to respond to her at all. They just looked at her coldly. Just as she was getting impatient and was about to make a move, she heard a rustling sound from the grass beside her. Could it be that the main character had arrived? Young General Chu, I haven't seen you for a long time. I'm afraid it's not in line with the reputation of Sichuan, a country of etiquette, right? Chu Qingyan's grip on her sword tightened when she heard the familiar and chilling voice. She turned around in disbelief. When she saw Peng Huang, who was dressed in a navy blue robe and had a jade-like face, standing in front of the thicket, she felt like an egg could be stuffed into her mouth. Who could tell her? Why would the crown prince of the neighboring country appear here? Although he couldn't see the change in her expression because of the veil, he could still figure it out from her movements. Peng Huang walked forward a few steps until she vigilantly tensed her body. Only then did he stop 10 feet away. Seeing this prince, you seem very surprised? But this prince feels very honored that young General Chu has not forgotten this prince. His confident voice had a satisfied smile. Peng Huang stared at her with sparkling eyes. Chu Qingyan's lips twitched, and she said in a somewhat speechless voice, "Who wouldn't be surprised to see the crown prince of an enemy country appear in their territory? Moreover, it has only been half a year since we lost to your southern blue country. This general is not so forgetful that I can't even recognize the enemy's appearance." The large man beside Peng Huang was about to angrily teach her a lesson when he heard this, but Peng Huang raised his hand to stop him. He smiled and his eyes revealed a look of admiration. "You're still so eloquent. With just a few words, you're able to make people panic. You're truly worthy of being the famous young General Chu on the battlefield." Chu Qingyan replied with a chuckle. The crown prince still hides a knife in his smile. "With just a few words, you're able to make people have no choice but to treat you seriously. You're truly worthy of being the southern blue country's famous smiling tiger. Admirable, admirable. Bold, you actually dare to insult our crown prince." The attendant immediately raised his sword to counter. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and looked at Peng Huang with a provocative gaze. Peng Huang waved his subordinates away and looked at the beautiful jade-like girl in front of him. His eyes sparkled. "Young General Chu is very brave. I wonder if this prince has the honor to invite the young general for a drink?" This invitation probably had an ulterior motive. Chu Qingyan gave a cold smile. "The crown prince's invitation is this one's honor, but this one is in a hurry, so I'm afraid I can't accompany you. If there is a chance, let's chat again another day." After saying this, she cupped her hands and looked at the blocked path, indicating for her subordinates to move aside. The smile on Peng Huang's face did not change. "Young general, this prince knows that you're in a hurry to find someone, but in this vast sea of people, you won't be able to find anyone in a short time. Since there's no time like the present, why don't we sit down first and have a chat? This prince is very interested in the tactics you use on the battlefield. I'm indebted to Crown Prince Peng for thinking so highly of me. However, this one is in a hurry, so I really can't drink with Crown Prince Peng. I ask for Crown Prince's forgiveness." Chu Qingyan's tone was cold, and she was just short of telling them to scram. No matter what, Peng Huang was still the crown prince of a country. Although he appreciated her, seeing that she didn't know what was good for her again and again, the smile on his face completely disappeared. His voice was filled with pressure. "Are you planning to refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit?" Chu Qingyan's face did not reveal anything, but her palm had already begun to move. "This one hasn't tried being forced to drink a forfeit yet, so how about I ask for some advice today?" He had never seen such a stubborn person in front of him, so his heart was filled with anger. "All right, then let this prince see how much your martial arts have improved after not seeing you for half a year." Hearing his tone, she felt uncomfortable, but this was what she wanted to do. Dong Ting had transferred all his internal energy to her, but she still had not tested just how much her cultivation had improved. "Go." Peng Huang took a step back and the people behind him immediately surrounded Chu Qingyan. They surrounded her and coldly pointed their swords at her. "Bullying the weak with numbers, bullying the weak with strength, it really is the style of your southern blue." Chu Qingyan's lips curled as she spoke without any mercy. "You." Peng Huang's face was very ugly. Before he could finish, the other side had already moved. The long sword came out of its sheath and sand flew into the air. The falling leaves and flowers were dazzling. Chapter 1376. Chu Qingyan had always wanted to know how much her skills had improved. Thus, when she saw that her opponent, who was extremely skilled in martial arts, was knocked back with a single strike, she was instantly stunned. She instantly killed her opponent like this? Dong Ting really left her a large pleasant surprise. Before she had time to be happy, the other side became even more irritable because she had injured their comrade. All kinds of life-threatening moves were sent at her. Peng Huang, who had been watching from the side, saw her easily take care of one of his guards. It would be a lie if he wasn't shocked. When did this person's martial arts progress this fast? It could simply be described as terrifying. His careless eyes suddenly became serious as he narrowed his eyes, not letting go of a single move from her. Actually, her moves were the same, but when she used them, they were several times stronger than before. Although she had not completely digested the internal energy Dong Ting gave her, it was more than enough to deal with these people. She was like a slippery loach as she swam among these people. The guards fell one by one, and when she pulled back her sword for the last time, the ground was littered with people groaning in pain. Her lips curled, and then she turned to take care of the final enemy, Pang Huang. However, when she pointed at him, an archer appeared out of nowhere and aimed at her. The tip of the arrow shone eerily under the sun, almost blinding her eyes. She did not look at the archers and turned to look at Pang Huang standing behind them. Her lips curled into a faint smile. Prince Pang, is this the demeanor of a country's ruler? Fighting with numbers? Bullying others? How could Pang Huang not hear her taunting? But he had always been thick-skinned, especially after meeting her. Many thanks for little General Chu's praise. Chu Qingyan coldly looked at him. Prince Pang, since you already know my identity, there is no need to call me little general. It makes me feel uncomfortable hearing it. Pang Huang gave a shrug. This prince thought you would like it, so of course I don't mind calling you Qingyan. However, you'll blame me for not knowing how to be gentle. I don't know why, but hearing this girl's name from your mouth, my entire body feels uncomfortable. It's best if you know one thing. We aren't familiar with each other, so don't call me by my name. Otherwise it will annoy me. When she was separated from Big Ice Cube, her heart was filled with worry. Now that this Cheng Yaojin had appeared, she was filled with anger. Chu Qingyan did not care about his identity as the crown prince at all, as she casually taunted him. Being in a high position, he was used to being welcomed by others. Now that he was being mocked by her again and again, even if Pang Huang had a good impression of her, he couldn't help being filled with anger. His hands clenched fists as he suppressed his anger to suppress it all to suppress it. But when the guard beside him asked if he should shoot, he made a hand gesture, indicating for them not to act rashly. He walked out under Chu Qingyan's provocative gaze, and his voice was filled with power. Little General, there is an old saying that a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes. After not seeing you for half a year, your martial arts have improved quite a bit, so this prince wants to ask you for advice. Reaching out his hand, someone handed over his large blade. Chu Qingyan unconsciously tightened her grip on the sword in her hand. She had fought with Pang Huang before, and his martial arts were unfathomable. In the valley, she could feel that he was not using his full strength. Now that her martial arts had increased quite a bit, she could fight with him and test the depths of his martial arts. But her mouth still did not let him off. You were heavily injured half a year ago. Could it be that you've already recovered? If you haven't, wouldn't it be said that this miss is bullying a handicapped person? Pang Huang almost couldn't hold the long blade in his hand. This person really didn't know what to say. Although he felt that she had a sharp tongue before, it wasn't to the point of being poisonous. It seemed like he still didn't understand her. Once he caught her, he would definitely not let her leave his body and let her know just how strong he was. You want to anger me? It's a pity that you've made a mistake. Chu Qingyan gave a soft snort. She never thought that he would see through her provocation this quickly. Once a person was angered, they would reveal a flaw, but it was a pity that he did not fall for it. Pang Huang felt that this person really was a strange girl. At this time, she could still scheme against him with just a few words. It was a pity that after suffering from her, he had learned his lesson and would not fall for her trap so easily. She raised her head to look at the sky. If she didn't leave this place before the sun set, then she might become a snack for the wild beasts in the mountains. She couldn't delay any longer. Seeing that this person seemed to have the mood to continue chatting with her, Chu Qingyan's lips twitched. Before he could open his mouth, she took the initiative to swing her sword at him. This sword was fast and fierce. Pang Huang's gaze fell onto her white as jade fingers. Then he raised his blade to block and counterattacked. She did not think that she would be able to take care of him with a single sword. So even though her first move was broken, she still had another move. Pang Huang knew that her cultivation had made a large leap, but he never thought that it would be to this extent. When experts exchanged blows, as long as they touched the sword, they would know the other party's strength. It could be seen that her cultivation was deep, but he could feel that she was not that proficient in using her internal energy. This was an opportunity that he could take advantage of. When the two of them brushed past each other, Pang Huang suddenly reached out his other hand to grab the brim of her hat. With a little force, the curtain hat fell into his hand. When the two of them landed, Chu Qingyan turned around and her cold gaze fell onto the curtain hat in his hand. Why did this person grab her hat for? Crazy. Pang Huang casually threw the curtain hat away, and then looked up at her. Her hair was tied up high with a white jade hairpin. 2 strands of hair fell down in front of her forehead, adding a bit of elegance. Her ink-black eyes were large, sparkling under the sun. Her snow-white skin and red lips. Her small face was so delicate that people couldn't help but want to reach out and touch it. He didn't know if it was softer than spring water. Her red clothes were like fire, and her waist was tied with a belt of the same color, making her seem even more slender. She held a sword in her hand that shined with a silver light. Her entire body seemed to be shrouded in a holy light, making people's hearts yearn for her. From the moment he saw her today, his heart was itching. He wanted to take off this hindrance hat and see her beauty. Now that he saw her, a jade-like beauty could not be better. He could feel the blood in his body surging. He had to make her stay. Even if he had to imprison her by his side, he would not hesitate to break her wings. Moreover, he had to take her down today. Otherwise, if he wanted to catch her next time, it would not be that easy. Chu Qingyan naturally did not know what he was thinking. She only felt that his gaze on her body was so hot that it made her feel irritated. She looked around, thinking of a way to escape. Qingyan, have you ever thought of leaving Xiao Su and me? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.